What if Naruto became the strongest wizard shinobi ever? Part 2. Azumo in. Are you Mia? Harry asked after casting the translation charm upon the blue-haired woman who approached them while he carried Homura to the front door. Yes, I'm Mia Asama. What has happened to Kagari? The woman asked with concern in her voice. She only vaguely looked around as the charm hit her. She's definitely as powerful as Kara if she could sense the spell hitting her, thought Harry. Harry decided that if it was the Mia, she deserved the whole truth. Long story, and I think I only understand part of it. Suffice it to say, he started having extremely debilitating chest pains. It started right after I think he recognized that he wanted me as his ashikabi. Mia gasped, "You're sure of this? How do you know this?" Harry wasn't quite ready for 20 questions yet, especially with someone who Karasuba considers having ruined her life. Can we please just get him to his room and onto a bed? I can attempt to heal him, and if I can't, I can likely get someone here very quickly who can. Mia looked at him shrewdly, and Harry got the distinct impression that she just now saw him properly for the first time. Her entire focus previously had definitely been upon Homura and not Harry and Musubi. Perhaps she thought he had spouted nonsense before and wasn't worth her time as she focused upon her injured friend. But now Harry definitely had her undivided attention. Sure, but I warn you, if you hurt Kagari, it will be the last thing you do, she said with a bit of menace as Harry felt an odd form of legitimacy pass over. The mind magic manifested itself behind Mia as the sensation made his eyes believe an odd sort of demonic purple mask floated behind Mia, ready to strike him down. Whatever, death threats, been there, done that, just show me to the damn room so I can try and help him. Recognition that the mask only seemed to annoy Harry passed across Mia's face for an instant, and she quickly led the way to Homura's room. Musubi followed immediately behind them, as well as an extremely attractive newcomer who had heard the noise also quickly joined, and she looked at Homura with a deep look of concern on her face as well. The group arrived at Homura's room and Mia motioned them inside. Mia began to ask just what he intended to do, when Harry asked for silence, cast the translation charm on the newest woman, and then simply asked for quiet while he prepared. Harry took out his beechwood wand and conjured a pen and piece of paper. He enchanted the pen to be linked to his mind in order to write out the information revealed by the next spell chain he cast. Then Harry began casting diagnostic after diagnostic upon Homura. Harry had no basis to assume a diagnosis, and no prior information on Homura's background. Mia could have probably provided him this information, but he decided to get as much information as he could on his own before including any secondhand information which could cause him to make invalid assumptions. Harry was casting as wide a net as possible, even running obscure diagnostics for ailments that hadn't afflicted anyone in centuries. Through it all, the pen wrote on and on. The whole time Harry cast his spells, Mia, Musubi, and the unknown girl watched on in trepidation. They were both worried for Homura and clearly wondered what on earth Harry was doing. He had completely tuned them out and had not paid the slightest bit of attention towards them or the pen that seemed to be alive and wrote gibberish on a piece of paper in front of them. To them, it appeared he insanely waved an odd stick around wildly and muttered nonsense under his breath, which caused Mia to slowly begin to anger. She was about to say something when a light touch was felt on her arm. Musubi was looking at her with a determined yet worried face and said, "Trust Harry. He's who I choose to be my ashikabi as well. He can do things I've never seen before. Please let him finish what he's doing." Mia stared at her a long time, and then finally nodded. The landlady and the two female sekirei resumed their silent vigil of the two men in the room. Finally, after about 10 minutes, Harry couldn't think of any additional spells to cast and reholstered his wand. He picked up the paper and began to read. Most of it was useless dribble, though three things eventually stood out to him. The most incredible revelation revealed by the scans was that Homura was listed as a she in multiple test results. She was surprisingly shown to have a metamorphagus talent like his old friend Tonks. The tests ultimately disclosed one last thing that troubled Harry immensely: someone had bound Homura's ability to actively utilize the metamorph talent. The binding was about to undergo a catastrophic collapse, which would likely implode her magical core. And since Harry knew Homura was partial to utilizing fire, he could easily imagine a fireball a half-mile wide with a sentient being only partially in control at its epicenter. The inferno created by such an event would easily destroy everything in path before it likely claimed Homura's life. The results had just barely sunk into his head when Harry found the need to sit down. He leaned back into a chair and after he put the diagnostic sheets down on a small table next to him. The need to slowly rub his eyes overcame him in an attempt to distract his mind from all the dangerous eventual outcomes of the block's failure. What he really needed to do was determine a logical plan of attack to remove the block. He mentally reviewed the facts he knew plus all the random information Tonks had told him about metamorphs long ago. If Homura was currently a female bound in a male form, that wasn't welcome news. It meant, while the binding was broke down, Homura would slowly revert back to female form at an extremely slow and painful rate. He remembered Tonks' explanation that gender changes were the hardest to undergo, and growing certain lower and upper appendages, in and out, tended to be quite painful. There was only one conclusion to be reached. That binding needed to be removed immediately. While Harry continued to ponder the possible choices silently, Mia walked over and picked up the paper. It was written in English, but that didn't appear to faze Mia as she could apparently read it anyways. "What does metamorphagus mean?" she asked Harry softly. Harry looked up at her and said, "I'll go through it all with you in a few minutes, let me see if I can't at least reduce her pain and get her to sleep. We can talk about her options afterwards. Oh, by the way," he added to the three girls, who all looked at him in confusion as he referred to Homura as a her. "I'm about to summon a friend who's going to literally pop in right in front of you." Don't attack him please. Harry figured with as serious as Homura's condition was, now wasn't the time to have his usual fun where he would summon in Dobby to people who are unaware of what was about to happen. Dobby. Yes sir. Harry Potter, sir. You're busy today Harry, what can I do for you? No time for explanations, my friend, Harry quickly said. I need a vial of dreamless sleep and a pain-reducing potion. Maybe a few nutrient potions as well, she's looking kind of underweight to me, he said as he gestured over to Homura for the sake of Dobby's reference. After you bring those here, hang around. I may need more of your help to undo an ability binding on the woman in the bed over there. Dobby's eyes widened as he glanced at Homura in agony on the bed. Yes sir, Harry Potter, Dobby's be right back. Harry, what was that? Musubi asked. Harry smiled weakly at her, and turned back to stare very tiredly at Homura while saying, that was a house elf, Musubi. Unfortunately, they're a slave race to wizards around the world. I managed to free him from a very evil man who was abusing him back when I was 12 years old. God, it's been 13 years since then. I've known Dobby for over half my life. Anyways, since then he's followed me around everywhere. I can't count the number of times the little bugger has saved my life. He's one of the few truly loyal friends I have. He's a slave, Mia said with a bit of anxiety. Harry looked at her, yes and no. Harry sighed. He hated the manner in which he had to carefully explain the history of house elves to each new person that encountered them. It ultimately was worth it though if it could prevent the knee-jerk reaction that Hermione had back in his 4th year of school. House elves are symbiotic with another person, family, or powerful magical location. They cannot produce magic on their own, thus they must bond with either a person, a family, or sometimes even a location if there's a lot of ambient magic in the air from heavy use. In return for the bond that keeps them alive and sane, house elves essentially act as butlers and maids for wizards. Dobby bonded himself to me without me even knowing when I was 12 years old. It was years before I even found out he had done so. He kept going on and on about wanting to be a free elf. Eventually I learned he meant free from abuse. He has no problem being bound to me. Does that explain? Yes, said Mia with a pained smile. I apologize, you mentioned that Dobby is a slave, and Musubi mentions that you will likely be her ashikabi, and you yourself say that Kagari has given you the impression he wants you as his. You can see my consternation, no. Harry nods wearily, I hate slavery in all forms. If these two, and anyone else for that matter, choose to have me as their ashikabi, I will treat them with respect, you have my word. Dobby reappeared and held the requested vials. Here, Harry Potter, sir. Thank you Dobby. Harry gestured to Mia. Mrs. Mia here likely will be very worried about Miss Homura. Can you hang around and ask her later if there's any work or chores that need to be done? I think she would appreciate it. Bring Winky here as well if you want. I know the two of you don't like being apart. Thank you, Harry Potter, sir. Dobby turned to Mia. Dobby will comes back later with his Winky and Wheeze helps with what we as can. And with that, Dobby popped away. He turned back to Mia. If you have any chores or other random things around the inn that you would like done, the elves will be glad to do it. They'll get it done 100 times faster than any of us will be capable of doing it too. I could also bring one of my cooks by, to watch whoever prepares the meals around here. Then they could prepare the food from then on. They only really know European and Latin American dishes at the moment, so they would need to learn traditional Japanese cuisine. Mia just nodded jerkily. The surprises continued to come left and right to her and she was apparently near the end of her rope. The other girl in the room who he hadn't learned the name of yet simply stood there with her mouth agape. Okay, nasty tasting potion time, thought Harry. He really didn't want to subject someone to the foul nastiness of magical potion consumption without a proper explanation of just what exactly they were about to drink, but he didn't seem to have much choice at the moment. Harry walked over to Homura, and conjured a chair to sit down upon next to the bed. Homura latched onto Harry's free arm and asked, can you make it stop? The desperation in her voice was nothing compared to the fear in her eyes. She had practically curled into a ball while she clutched her chest with the other hand. Yes, I know what's happening to you, and I promise you that after we remove it, I'll be right next to you as we hunt down the bastard who did this to you. Thank you. How do we fix it? Her voice was shaky, but her eyes told a different story. There now was fire and determination there to see this through. First off, you need to rest a bit so your magic settles. I have a potion here that will ease the pain for about a day. It should kick in about 5 minutes after you take it. I want you to meditate and then eat when you've settled your mind a bit. After you've eaten, you need to take this second potion. It's called dreamless sleep. When you take it, you'll have exactly 8 hours of completely uninterrupted sleep. When you wake up later, I can walk you through everything I've learned when I ran my diagnostics. Until then, I need you to relax and not think about any of this. If you know meditation, please do that. It will help settle the pain and slow the damage quicker. Just to ease your worries, I'll tell you just a little bit. You have magical abilities. All of you do in fact, Harry said as he looked at all of them in the room who were listening in. To simplify things greatly, Homura, you specifically have a very rare ability to morph your appearance. You can look like anyone you want when you use this ability. However, someone apparently didn't like this, so they bound this ability, and locked you into form you're currently in. Basically, right now, in times of extreme emotional stress, the power of your magic is slowly eroding the binding on your morph ability. Basically, the binding is failing at an incredibly slow rate, and that's why you feel pain. Normally a change like this would be near instantaneous and damn near painless. But you're going through the change at a rate that's so slow it's borderline torture. If you can settle your emotions a bit, it'll help stop it and the pain. Your emotions are tied to your magic. The more chaotic they get, the more they'll affect the binding, and cause you pain. Homura nodded and reached for the first vial. As she was about to drink it, Harry said with a sad humorless smile, "Oh, and one more thing, that potion you're about to drink is one of the foulest tasting things on the planet. I know it sucks, but you have to drink the whole thing." Homura looked at the potion wearily, and then simply pinched her nose, and downed the potion in one go. "Oh god, that was horrible." Harry laughed. "You have no idea. I can say, one of the foulest, accurately because I've had other potions that are even worse than that one. Imagine that you've lost all the bones in an arm, and then you're forced to drink something that tastes worse than that to grow them back. The potion then keeps you awake overnight and makes you feel like you have wooden splinters in your arm the entire time while the bone is grown back." Harry chuckled at Homura's wide eyes. "Get some rest, okay? That potion should start reducing the pain in a few minutes." Homura nodded and closed her eyes. Harry got up, and walked over to the others. "Winky," he softly called. "Yes, Harry Potter," the female elf said as she appeared. "Can you watch Miss Homura for us please while we go into another room and talk? I don't know if she was paying attention when Dobby was here earlier, so she may overreact to seeing you. So try and stay out of sight. Come get us if you think she's having a problem, okay?" Harry said all of this very softly, hoping to not disturb Homura as she went through meditation routine she was obviously well versed in performing. "I will, Harry. Dobby is here too, waiting for orders from Miss Mia." As he nodded his acknowledgement to his faithful elf, Harry beckoned the rest out the door and shut it as the last person exited. Harry turned to Mia. "Is there a place we can all sit down so I can go through this all with you?" "Yes, please follow me," and she led them all into a dining room, where they all sat on the floor. Mia served tea to everyone, and when she had sat down, Harry began to speak. "Well, let me see if I can't provide some answers to all your questions. Please try and not interrupt me. This is a long story, and it's likely your answers will come later on. It isn't my whole life story, but it's a very good abridged version of it. First off, I'm Harry Potter. I'm a wizard born in England 26 years ago. This is Musubi, number 88. Mia spoke up first. "Again, I'm Mia Asama. I own this inn." She looked at the woman to her right on the couch, and after a moment's hesitation said, "This is Uzume. Number 10. She normally doesn't speak up about her being a sekire, but I believe it would be advantageous to her if she didn't utilize her normal secrecy." Uzume playfully glared at Mia. "Like she said, I'm Uzume. My Ashikabi's name is Chiho. Do you have an Ashikabi, Mia?" asked Musubi. Harry stiffened at the question, and he was sure Mia saw it before Harry relaxed. "No child, I'm sekire and at the same time I am not. I'm something wholly different. I may be number 1, but I may as well not be," she finished cryptically. From there, Harry went on to explain his life as he did with Karasuba earlier that morning. He demonstrated some magic, gave each woman a translation necklace, and explained just what it did so language barriers wouldn't be an issue in the future. Eventually, Mia spoke up afterwards and re-asked the questions she asked earlier. "Can you explain, Harry, how you knew Homura wanted you as her Ashikabi, and what you will have to do to help her?" Harry nodded. "I've met 4 sekire thus far who I believe have wanted me as their Ashikabi. I'm not sure what I can do for the first 2 yet, as they already were forced into taking an Ashikabi against their will. I have some ideas on how to help them, but I need to do some more research first. That's actually what I was intending on doing this evening after finding some food, but then Musubi here literally fell out of the sky and slammed me into the ground. The 3rd sekire to give me that impression is her, and Homura is the 4th. The way I can tell is through an allure, or compulsion you sekire seem to be capable of putting out. I'll try and explain it in a manner that's familiar to me. There's a magical race that's prevalent in small enclaves in France, and in Eastern Europe called Vilas. They're the descendants of an avian race who has extreme control of fire. Nowadays, they're incredibly beautiful, almost ethereal-looking women. One of the things they can do is enthrall men with a compulsion that acts upon a man's lust. Basically it'll turn them into mindless drooling idiots. I'm immune to it, so far as I can block it out using some magically based mind defenses that stop attacks from reaching me. That's how I can tell when a sekire has chosen me as a potential Ashikabi." Musubi blasted me with a huge allure that almost put me down on my knees in pain. It hit my mental walls and hurt that badly to resist it. The compulsion was attempting to make me do one thing, kiss her. Homura did the same thing before her own pain got so bad she collapsed. The women in the room seemed shocked at this revelation, and it was Mia that finally spoke. "I've never heard of this sort of thing occurring before with sekire, but you've said it's happened 4 times to you so far. Who were the other 2 that were already bonded that wished for you as their Ashikabi?" Harry felt like he would be betraying Karasuba to her enemy if he revealed her name, plus it wasn't safe for him to reveal this as long as she was a member of the discipline squad and working directly for MBI. "I'm sorry Mia, but I can't reveal that yet. It would potentially endanger both women if it were revealed they might have a method of re-winning themselves to me rather than their current Ashikabi. I'll help them later, when I can ensure their safety." Before Mia could inquire further, Uzume interrupted and asked, "You believe it's possible for a sekire to change their Ashikabi?" Harry looked closer at Uzume for the first time since sitting down. She was a very attractive brunette who currently donned a simple blue AT-shirt with a pink star and a pair of capri-style jeans. It was incredibly obvious she was wearing no bra, and her chest was giving Musubi's competition in terms of sheer ridiculousness in size. She seemed someone who would normally be the first to laugh in the room, yet the question she just asked was weighing quite heavily upon her mind. Unfortunately, it's not as simple as that. I think the bond between a sekire and their Ashikabi is comparable to soul bond in the magical world, and is also very similar to a mating bond that Vila have once they find their life mate. Soul bonds, once they are properly consummated and established between people who truly love and hold affection for one another, are permanent and cannot under any circumstance be removed. The advantages of a soul bond include longer life and increased health, sharing their magic, and even sharing some abilities. Basically, it makes both members of the bond stronger. The unfortunate part of a soul bond is that, when one member of the bond dies, the other one dies within minutes. I believe the two Sekureis I spoke to earlier will likely be able to re-wing with me if they choose to do so because they have incredibly weak bonds to their Ashikabi. Both were bonded against their will, and neither one has ever been or has any desire to be intimate with their Ashikabi. I think ruining will only work in situations like this, if it works at all. A Sekure who truly loves their Ashikabi, who has established a strong and healthy bond, will not be able to re-wing to someone else if they tried. Does that make sense to all of you? The girl closed her eyes and seemed to be trying to hold back tears. Mia reached over and embraced the girl, who began to sob. Harry looked at Musubi, who looked confused at what had just transpired. Come on Musubi, Harry whispered to her, let's give Uzume some privacy and go outside for a bit. You and I need to talk anyways. 00000. Outside it was almost dusk. The sky was lit with an almost unearthly orange hue and the clouds present were magnificent in color. As he stood outside the inn with Musubi, after the day that they just had, the potential peacefulness of this inn and the wonderful sunset was quite welcome. Harry knew what Musubi wanted to discuss, and it wasn't an unwelcome topic. The thing both surprised and troubled him at the moment was not the idea of him creating a potential bond with Musubi and the other women, but that the act itself didn't bother him. Just like Harry, they were all fighters, all students of disciplines of the mind and body. Each of them was being forced to participate in events that deep down, none of them likely wanted anything to do with. Harry doubted he could have found more kindred souls anywhere else in the world. Gryffindors charge forward. Harry mentally chanted the old mantra to fight his present-day cynical instincts, before he turned to Musubi. He reached out and held onto both of her hands with his. Her hands were soft, surprising to him when he considered that hand-to-hand combat was her specialty. He looked into her brown eyes. They were so innocent, so wide-eyed and joyful at such simple things he had shown her so far. And she had such a big heart that he could genuinely see himself fall for her in time, just like any of the other girls he had met so far. After he took a deep breath, he began, do you know what you're getting into, by asking me to be your Ashikabi? Danger won't stop with the end of this Sekure plan even if we get through it. Adventure always seems to be following me, but death and grief are right behind it. And by virtue of you being with me, they will follow you as well. Is this something you can live with, Musubi? Can you be there for me through all the terrible things I know we'll encounter, just like I'll be there for you? She looked at him with a small, understanding smile, and simply said, I will follow you down whatever road you travel, Harry. Silence reigned, as each wondered if the other would ask the question to bind them together. Finally, Harry decided it was time to commit himself for once in his life. He was really only responsible for his godson Teddy, and even then, he had barely been able to participate in Teddy's life after being exiled from England. This would be different. This would be something he could commit to with every fiber of his being. It simply felt right. Musubi, Harry said as he looked right into her eyes and tried to remember the love he had for his parents, Sirius, and Remus when he had viewed them through the resurrection stone all those years ago. Would you honor me by being my Sekure? For her answer, she leaned forward slowly and closed her now misted eyes and kissed Harry. Their mouths met, and the instant their lips parted, an explosion of magic seemed to erupt from Musubi. If Harry had opened his eyes, he would have seen enormous ethereal wings spring from the back of Musubi, and a bright luminescence expand outwards from both of them. Also, if Harry had looked around after he had opened his eyes, he would have seen 6 pairs of eyes from the inn, who all stared at the two of them in awe at the sheer amount of magic being released. One set that had just gotten up from bed for some inexplicable reason. She smiled and wondered if that's what her winging with Harry would be like, and for the first time in her life, held no fear in her heart of being winged. One set remembered a husband that had passed on, that had never been able to wing her like all of her sisters were capable. One set openly cried because of her own despair and grief as she remembered her own winging, and prayed that her own Ashikabi could somehow recover someday from her illness that threatened her life. The last set of Sekure eyes that watched the events did so from a dark hidden room in the inn. She watched what she could her while security cameras went on the fritz, and wondered if someday she too would find someone worthy to make her Ashikabi. The final 2 sets were longtime friends, happy that their master had finally found someone to share his life with, and prayed the threads of loose bonds they had encountered in the air throughout this day would join with their master as well. But Harry and Musubi were oblivious to all of this, so lost in the wonder of the magic they shared with each other. There was so much magic transferred between Musubi and him that Harry honestly had no idea where Musubi began and he ended. He also vaguely in his half-incoherent state began to wonder if he had been wrong earlier. Other Sekureis may have partial, one-way bonds with their Ashikabis, but Harry knew in his heart, what he had with Musubi was a true soul bond. For better or worse, Musubi's and his very souls were now linked for all time. And Harry was just fine with that. 00000. Musubi and Harry eventually came back inside the inn, and were greeted by Dobby and Winky as they grinned broadly with more excitement than Harry thought he ever had seen the overexcited elves demonstrate. "We so pleased that Master Harry and Mistress Musubis have bonded." Musubi didn't understand the significance of this, and looked at Harry. He leaned over, and kissed her again, which instantly conjured the angelic wings again, in their eyes, and in the eyes of magic itself. "We are married now. You are now as much their master as I am. All I ask is that you please treat them as family." Musubi's eyes lit up before she grabbed Harry in a rib-cracking hug. They heard clapping start, and they broke apart to see Mia, Uzume, and Homura stood there, all with smiles on their faces. Mia spoke up. "Harry, Musubi, I've never seen a Sekure acquire their wings in quite so spectacular a fashion. Congratulations." "Yeah, congratulations, Harry. And you too, Musubi Potter," screamed Uzume as she ran up and hugged Musubi. Homura walked up and slowly tried to keep steady. Harry interrupted her before she could start. You should still be in bed. I know you wanted to come down, but what's happening to you is very serious. I can help you, but only if you help me by taking care of yourself. Homura nodded at him, and looked at Musubi and said, Congratulations, I'm glad you were able to find him. Musubi, still high on excitement, ran to Homura and hugged her, while she said, It was great, Kagari. I hope yours is as amazing as mine was. Ahem, Harry cleared his throat in spite of his high amusement at Musubi's antics. He looked at Homura. Come on, since you refuse to sit and relax, you and I need to go upstairs and talk. They slowly made their way back to Homura's room. Harry tried to not to be a mother hen to her, but ended up a miserable failure. Eventually they made it to her room, and got her settled back in her bed. Have you eaten yet? Harry asked. No, I was trying to rest here when I felt something. I looked out the window and saw you and Musubi outside. I had never seen anything like that before. Homura shook his head in disbelief and said, I've seen a lot of Sekureis and Ashikabis come together, both willingly and unwillingly. No other Sekure gaining wings has gained as much power as Musubi did just now. Harry tried to think of a reason why, but could only think of one thing. I think that more than likely the soul bond forged between the two of us grants her some of my power. Soul bond? Asked Homura, clearly confused. Harry shook his head, and holding up his hand, let me start from the beginning. This will take a bit, but it'll help you understand a bit more about me and what's going on. But first things first. Winky, the quiet female elf, appeared in a much more unassuming fashion than her exuberant partner usually did. Yes, Master Harry, sir. Homura needs something light to eat. Is there anything in particular you want to eat, Homura? Some noodles would be fine, thank you. Winky, while you arrange for the food, can you mention to the cooks that they may want to brush up on their traditional Japanese cuisine? I have a feeling they may be making less and less European-style meals in the future and more food from this country. The elf left to carry out her orders, and Harry proceeded to run through his life story for the third time that day, though this time he recounted everything of note up to this morning. Now, some things happened today, before I happened upon Musubi, the Doofus twins, and you. I'm not really quite ready to talk about that, mainly because it's simply not my story to tell in its entirety. I will say that it's very likely there are two already winged Sekure out there that will likely be bonding to me. I spent the majority of the morning and afternoon with them before I met you. Homura was shocked by this, simply blurting out, this is what you were talking about earlier. But how can an already winged Sekure join you? We've always been told we'll die if we leave our Ashikabi. While I don't discount that theory at a very high level, I think there's a bit more to it than that. Suffice it to say, both of these Sekure were winged against their will, and there is no love in that relationship. And I don't believe there is any potential for future love in their relationship either. You all seem to be created with the idea of finding love and bonding to someone powerful. I think whatever bond is between these particular two Sekure and their Ashikabi is so weak, they haven't gained anything at all from the relationship. I'm not even convinced either would die if the Ashikabi died in their particular case. They are clearly not bonded anywhere near the level Musubi and I are. I know it's a crazy concept to grasp, but bonds between magical beings are most intense when the intent to form them is willing from both parties and there is a powerful emotion behind it. I don't know how to explain it, and I know I'm probably doing a very poor job attempting it right now. I just know I'm right. I think any Sekure that was forcibly bonded could break that bond and re-wing to their true Ashikabi if given the chance and choice. Homura seemed stunned into silence, but then slowly her lips curled into a smile. That makes me feel a lot better actually if it can be proven true. So many Sekure have been forcibly taken and winged by people who have mistreated and misused them. This will make a lot of Sekure happy if it could be done. And it makes me feel like less of a failure to all those Sekure I couldn't save. They may still have a chance now. Hopefully we can, and I'll gladly help you to help them. Now, we need to talk about the results of all the stuff I ran on you when we first arrived. There are a few things you need to know, and none of it is all that pleasant. There's a light at the end of the tunnel though, if you're willing to endure and see your way through to it. I'll probably be repeating a bit of what I said earlier, but it's best you hear everything so it fully sinks in. First things first, you're a metamorphagus. They are very rare amongst wizards. The ratio of normal humans to wizards is like 1 in 1,000. The ratio of wizards to metamorphagus is like 1 in 10,000. It's a very rare ability and most wizards go their whole lives without even knowing the ability exists, let alone meeting one. I've had the honor of knowing one for 3 years before she was killed during the war one told you about. Her son is my godson. Harry grew quiet at this point in remembrance and seemed to focus on something far away. He usually hated it when this happens, when he got lost in thought and memories. Homura realized what he was doing and simply reached over and grabbed his hand with hers, squeezing gently. At the touch, Harry refocused his eyes on Homura, nodding his thanks. Anyways, sorry for the tangent. Basically it means that if someone hadn't screwed around with your magic, you would have the ability to mimic essentially anyone's appearance that you've ever seen, whenever you want. It doesn't matter who it is, how young, how old, or which gender. Homura briefly gasped at this, like a sudden piece of a puzzle hidden from her throughout her life suddenly fell into place. That leads to the second revelation I mentioned. Someone locked you into this form and bound you to it. It means the form you're currently in isn't actually natural for you. And here's the whopper of all of them. You are not a natural male. You are, in fact, a female. Homura's eyes widened and Harry could easily see the tears as they began to form. Harry got up from the chair he had sat in beside the bed, and laid down on it, taking the distraught Morpher into his arms. Someone bound you into the form you're in now, and to top it off, whoever did this to you quite frankly did a piss poor job doing it. Your bindings are breaking, albeit very, very slowly. The problem is, as the bindings loosen, your form is slowly and painfully trying to force itself back to what it should naturally be. It can't do it all the way though, so it's stuck in this perpetual state of, sort of, changing, which is very stressful on your body and causing you all this pain. The amount of pain you felt today was because of how you reacted to me, as a possible ashikabi. I think a bit of your magic slammed into the binding, and broke a bit more of the block on you at the same time, because you all that pain. So, here's the deal. I know how to remove the binding. Unfortunately, you can't be asleep during the ritual that will break it. I won't lie to you. It will likely hurt more than anything you've ever experienced in your whole life. But, once they're off, you'll immediately revert back to being in your natural form. I think I understand if you don't view that as necessarily a good thing for now. Harry's attempt at a joke hit home, and one side of Homura's mouth turned upwards for a brief moment before it returned to a hard straight line. On the plus side, however, you won't be in pain anymore once it's done, and then you can learn how to switch back to your male form if you prefer being male to being female. I know it's a lot to throw at you, but I would like to remove the bindings tomorrow. Also, I believe I'm your ashikabi, but I don't know how winning you with the binding active will affect you, so I'd like to at least wait till you're unbound before the two of us ponder whether to proceed with winning you. I want to make sure you're free to do whatever you want or need, okay? Homura nodded, was silent for a bit. She would occasionally look out the window and back up at Harry, trying to put words to something. Harry simply waited, knowing from the experiences of Karasuba and Haihane earlier today, that the lives of Sekureis could be extremely tough, and it looked like Homura's was no different. They did this to me at the MBI labs. I don't know how they did it, but that's where it happened. They ran test after test, made me down medications by the fistful sometimes. Nothing changed, the pain was always there. They even told me I would never find an ashikabi, and there was the distinct chance I would become a discarded number. Homura saw Harry's confusion at this statement, and explained, it's what happens when they over-medicate a Sekirei. The Sekirei is, retired, forcefully sometimes. There's only one I know that's managed to escape after being declared scrapped, a woman named Akatsu. Her abilities were far too powerful and they tried to rein them in. They nearly destroyed her mind while doing so. She can't be given wings, so she'll never be with an ashikabi. I've seen her occasionally since she escaped. I protected her a few times when she got in trouble. I have no idea where she is now though. I doubt she knows who I am either. You giving me a chance to get wings is more than I ever could have hoped for. I used to work as a male escort. I've dated hundreds of women while trying to find an ashikabi. Obviously I had no luck. Then you show up and within 30 minutes I knew you're the one. If you'll have me, I'll gladly become one of your Sekirei. Harry nodded, then I gladly accept. But not until those bindings are off of you. It can be dangerous creating a magical bond between two people if one of their cores is blocked or bound. It can kill you, understand? I'll stay up tonight, and get the ritual prepared to accomplish everything as soon as you wake up. In the meantime, I'm giving you a necklace. It casts a translation charm on you that will allow anyone who you hear speaking to appear to be speaking in whatever your native language is. I'm speaking English at the moment, but I bet it sounds like Japanese, right? All that greeted Harry's statement was wide eyes and a slow nod. Harry continued, it also has my family crest upon it. In the magical world, it signifies you are now under my protection. I've given one to everyone in the inn I've met so far, even Mia and Uzume. What this means for you, is that you can call my house elves now to aid you if you need it. Dobby appeared once again and squeaked, Harry Potter sir, you shouldn't be disturbing Miss Homura. She needs rests, go now. Homura had to blink and actually pinched herself while just staring at the tiny little being that waved a finger disapprovingly at Harry. Then a small smirk appeared on her face, someone's in trouble. Harry simply rolled his eyes, they can be a bit exuberant on occasion, but they're some of the best and most loyal friends you'll ever have. Drink that potion there and then I'll see you in 8 hours. 00000. Harry spent the next few hours in his newly appointed room in the inn. Dobby made a dozen trips back and forth between the combined Potter Black library that was in Switzerland, all in support of Harry as he scoured book after book for the correct ritual to match the diagnostics he ran earlier. Eventually he found the correct circle and spent another 2 hours in an empty room set aside by Mia in order to transfer the runic diagrams to the floor that would remove the metamorph block on Homura. It was very late when he finally returned to his room that Mia had assigned him. As he walked in, he wasn't surprised to see Musubi there on the bed already asleep. What he was surprised to see was her snoring softly, completely naked without a blanket covering her. One thing at a time Harry repeated to himself as he tried to focus on what he still wanted to accomplish. He desperate attempted to avoid all glances at the insanely hot girl he had essentially married today. What a crap wedding night I'm giving her, Harry suddenly realized, and resolved to make sure Musubi was okay after he was done writing his letter. He sat down at the desk in the corner of the room, and began a letter to Karasuba that let her know what had transpired after he left MBI Tower today. Kara, Dobby has been instructed to give this to you when you're alone. Only you and Haihane will be able to read it, but it's up to you whether you decide to share this with her for now. You won't believe the day I had after I left MBI. I was out getting some food, and was going to spend the rest of the night researching forms of magical bonds for you and Haihane, when a Sekirei literally fell out of the sky and landed on me. Some idiot lightning chicks were trying to eliminate her while she was still unwinged. I saved the girl number 88 Musubi from them, and also met number 6, Homura. Both have reacted to me. Musubi was a no-brainer to wing and I did so this afternoon at her request. She seems very nice, a bit innocent still to the world, but I sometimes think that's still a good thing. The whole idea of making it as far into life as she has been able to without having her spirit crushed or see the truly terrible things people can do. I certainly know my innocence and faith in the world was shattered a long time ago. I almost envy her. In fact, I know I do. Homura is a different story. I have no idea what these so-called scientists do at MBI, but I want the head of whatever bastard was in charge of adjusting Homura on a pike. The things they did to her are absolutely disgusting. In the magical world, the crimes of found committed against her would be punishable by the Dementor's kiss. What that means is the foulest, most loathsome creature in the world you can imagine. They were the source of the Grim Reaper mythos for non-magicals would be used to suck their soul out through their mouth. This isn't just a simple execution. Their soul would literally be devoured and destroyed. Tomorrow, I'll be putting Homura through a ritual here at the place we're staying to break the bindings on her. And that's the other thing I really wanted to tell you. The three of us are staying at Mia's inn. She's been pleasant so far, but I'm well aware of what she did to you in the past, so I haven't mentioned you or Haihane yet by name. If she ends up being a problem for you, we'll leave. I've already set in motion buying some property here in Tokyo that I plan on placing under every conceivable protection known to wizard, goblin, and elf. No one will be able to find us hiding there, not even via satellite or non-magical electronic tracking devices. Sorry to dump all this on you, but I really felt you should know. Knowledge is power, and I've gone through my life with too many people withholding information from me that I had a right to know, and I won't do the same to you. Well, it's late, and it's going to be a rough day running that ritual for Homura in the morning. Say hello to Haihane for me. Thinking of you, HP. Harry finished up his letter, and placed a charm on it so that only Karasuba and Haihane would be able to read it. After the letter was sent via Dabi, Harry stripped down to his boxers, walked over to the bed, where he looked down upon the occupant that slowly slept unaware of his presence. She lay there on her back completely nude and still snored away, oblivious to his proximity to her. It was dark enough in the room to not make out distinct details of her body, but from what he could tell she definitely had one of the most amazing figures he had ever been in the presence of. In fact, all of the women he had encountered today were stunningly beautiful. He hadn't had time yet to wrap his mind around the fact that he had basically done the magical equivalent of eloping today, as well as just left the room of someone who he would likely do the same with tomorrow, and that he had just written a letter to what was likely to be his third wife who would pass on a hello to a fourth. A phrase from his youth repeated in Harry's mind, something that seemed highly applicable at the moment: Harry Potter does not do normal. He shook the thoughts from his head and lay down next to her. A quick conjured blanket was draped over the two of them as he settled down next to her. She shifted in her sleep and quickly buried her face in his neck and snaked one leg possessively around him. He wrapped his arms around her back and was surprised at the position which his arm brushed against her right breast, pressed up against his chest. He stilled in case she woke from the intimate contact. However, she didn't wake, and only once did she let out a sigh of contentment as Harry settled into sleep next to her. 00000. The next morning, Harry woke up suddenly as Uzume stood over him and Musubi with a lecherous grin plastered on her face. She smiled quite evilly and said, "Am I interrupting something?" Harry wondered what the heck she was on about, only to look down and see that the blanket he'd conjured no longer covered him and Musubi, and she had her hand down his boxers, his manhood quite firmly grasped in her hand. He was momentarily taken aback by the revelation and Uzume's apparent glee at her findings, before he decided to turn the tables on her. "Yes, Uzume, I believe you just may have been. Why, do you wish to join in?" He purposefully dropped his gaze to Uzume's chest, and did a salacious once-over of her whole body while he sported a patented Potter half-grin. Her face went bright red and she immediately began to stutter incoherently. She quickly decided the only safe option was retreat and ran from the room as fast as she could, and only stopped to shut the door behind her as she flew through the threshold. Vastly amused by Uzume's antics, he gently shook Musubi's shoulder while he whispered, "Musubi, time to get up." She shifted, her grip on him strengthening suddenly and caused Harry's eyes to nearly bug out of his head. Crap, these girls could do serious damage while sleeping. "Come on, number 88, time to move." Musubi's eyes fluttered open and she looked up at Harry. She smiled when their eyes connected, but then her eyebrows creased as if in thought. She lifted her body up slightly, looking down to see what her hand had managed to grip onto. Harry watched as she gasped, and pulled her hand out of his pants as if scalded. "Ah, you're going to make me think you don't like me now," Harry said while doing a poor job of pouting. "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean," but her apologies were silenced as Harry raised himself up and kissed her, releasing her wings and gaining the reward of hearing her moan into his mouth. He threw a colloportus vaguely in the direction of the door and Harry was rewarded with the characteristic squelching sound as the door magically locked and sealed itself shut. They snogged for a few minutes and Musubi slowly slid onto him until she had straddled him. It was a chore to not let his hands wander greedily over the body of the literal angel, grinding her pelvis into his. The massive chest that softly rubbed against his had not helped matters either. Eventually they broke apart and simply stared into each other's eyes. She was an absolute vision of beauty to Harry, and he knew he had made the right choice when he pursued this the previous day. He embraced her, and said, "Thank you for choosing me." Her radiant smile was the only response besides holding him even more tightly in her arms. Eventually though, they heard a knock on the door. "Come on children, it's time to get up for breakfast. Open this door immediately." It was Mia, and the last part was said quickly with a definite hint of demand attached. Harry assumed that she likely wasn't used to locked doors in her inn. Musubi looked panicked, but Harry simply held his arm up, and winked at her. A freshening charm on each made them appear to each have showered and another flung at the clothes strewn across the room made them smell like they had just been laundered. A volley of rapid-fire switching spells instantly put the clothes on their bodies, and some quick transfiguration made it look like the clothes they wore were different from yesterday's apparel. Harry could care less if he had bedhead, but another quick wave of his hand gave Musubi's hair the appearance she had already labored at least 45 minutes on it this morning. Not 10 seconds after her demand, Harry had walked over to the door and opened it to see a surprised Mia and a shocked Uzume. Mia obviously hadn't expected them to be dressed as Uzume appeared to have ratted their sleeping arrangements out. Something I can help you with, Mia, Harry said with a slight smirk and twinkle in his eye. He sometimes thought that the only truly useful thing he had gotten from Dumbledore was the inspiration to research how to cast that eye twinkle spell that infuriated everyone who dealt with the old man. She merely blinked in response, which caused Harry to howl with laughter internally. Mia probably wasn't one to get flustered often if what Karasuba told him was anywhere near accurate, and Kara would probably laugh at this story. Just making sure you both were awake. See you downstairs. Musubi will probably join you down there in a bit. I'm going to recheck the ritual runes I set up last night first, and then check on Homura. I'll be down after that. Uzume followed Mia, and Harry gave her an over-the-top wink as she passed, which caused a bright red blush to erupt on her cheeks again. He realized he would need to be careful around her, because he couldn't imagine himself winning games of flirtation often with her. Once they were out of sight, he started to quietly laugh. His mirth continued as he proceeded to the room in the far corner of the inn that had been set aside by Mia the previous day. Everything appeared to still be where it was left the night before, and ambient magic from being around so many Sekirei had already begun to charge the circle up like he had hoped. He had hoped this would happen, since it otherwise would require him to empower the circle on his own, and stuff like that always gave Harry a massive headache afterwards and required a day or so to recover. A quick stop by Homura's room revealed the fiery guardian Sekirei still slept peacefully. Harry checked his watch, and found the 8-hour potion should expire any minute, so he decided to stick around and wait. After he conjured a new chair to sit in next to the bed, he decided to summon Dobby to get caught up with current events. Dobby. Yes, sir. Harry Potter, sir. How are things? Everything's be fine, Harry. Did you have any problems last night getting Karasuba alone? No, sir. Miss Karsubas was on solo patrol in city last night. Did she have anything to say? She said she's would write Harry Potter when she's had a chance, but that they were expecting trouble last night and had to pay attention to her duties. She also said the new sword is very fun. Yes, I'm sure she's having a stabbingly good time with it. I wonder if she named it. I always wanted to name the sword of Gryffindor, Mr. Pointy, but Hermione for some reason never appreciated my humor. Is there any news from the goblins? Property was purchased this morning, and warders will begin this afternoon. They estimate tomorrow or day after before it's up to Harry Potter standards. How big a place did they find? Dobby believes it'd be 20 rooms, and with space expansion done by Master Harry it could go as high as 60 or 70. And it has space for everything else Master Harry asked for. Awesome, this'll turn out great. I just got to sell Mia on the idea. I hope she agrees. When will Miss Karsubas and Miss Heinies be arriving here? Not sure yet, they're in a difficult spot. I think they'll leave the discipline squad and MBI regardless if they can be re-winged to me or not. But we have to make sure it's safe for them to leave first. The moment they leave and that Manaka guy finds out, their lives will be in danger. Granted, Kara can take care of herself pretty much against anyone besides me and maybe Mia, so I'm not worried about her. I'm more worried about Haihane. The more you say, the more I start thinking you weren't expecting me to be awake yet, said a voice suddenly. Harry looked up in shock, and saw that Homura had turned on her side and now gazed at him with half a smile on her face. Shit. Harry whipped out his wand. How about we play a game? It's called the Obliviate game. Obliviate. That's when you erase someone's memory, right? Harry simply nodded at this, which caused Homura's eyes to widen in fear. You're really going to take my memories away? She looked half a step away from hyperventilating, so Harry decided to cut this off from the start. Nope, just trying to impress upon you how important it is. No one knows that not only Karasuba and Haihane want me to be their Ashikabi, but they both are going to quit the discipline squad the second we figure out how to ruin them. No one can know, especially Mia. Not yet at least. I guess I can live with that. Just make sure I'm a few miles away when those two go into the same room with each other. That bad, huh? You have no idea. Their fights and arguments are the things of legend amongst single digits who have been active long enough to have heard about them. It shouldn't be for too much longer. Hopefully it won't be much beyond the next 1 or 2 days. I believe I have a solution to everyone's problem with the Sekirei plan. What are you? Harry said, twitching a single finger at her mischievously. No more questions. Breakfast time. See you later, Dobby. Let me know if anything comes up. Yes, sir, Harry Potter, sir. And with that, the elf popped away. Harry helped Homura out of bed and threw some freshening charms at the grateful Sekirei. They joined the rest of the house at breakfast. It was a quiet meal for the group. None of the girls understood the ritual that would take place and that had them all worried. Finally, Harry decided to allay some fears and get them involved in the ritual as well. Okay, since no one can seem to ignore the big pink elephant in the room, I might as well go over what's going to happen now and save everyone some trouble. Mia graciously set aside a room that I prepared for the purpose of removing Homura's binding. Homura, you will need to wear all cotton clothing. No metal, nothing synthetic. It's acceptable to go nude, but that's your choice. Cotton clothing is fine. Some runes on the floor will be charged up with my magic. Then, I will get one final acknowledgement from Homura, and then kick the ritual off. The reason I'm making sure to explain this to you all, is I would like all of you to be involved in the ritual as well. I'll be feeding my own magic, and directing its use, but the ritual can be strengthened if individuals with a relationship of some kind participate as well. Mia, you're almost like a mother to everyone here, in the way you protect and guide everyone. Uzume, you are good friends with Homura, and Musubi already has very strong sisterly feelings towards her. Normally we would 4 people plus myself, but 3 should be fine. You will all act as anchors for Homura, to ensure her magic is not harmed as mine is used to break down all the bindings affecting her. You are in no danger, and your purpose just makes sure that Homura comes through this as strongly as she possibly can. Could I ask you all to participate? The three women all looked at each other and nodded, and Mia was the one who spoke up. I think we all agree to help, but I think we can provide you your missing anchor for this. Mia reached for a rubber duck on the table and spoke to the duck. Oh Matsu, I know you're listening. Either you pay your electric bill for the month or you will join us down here, now. Harry was quite proud of his occlumency skills and the ability to not react to another name from the first-generation discipline squad Karasuba had mentioned yesterday. A thump and a crash could be heard from upstairs. Quick footsteps were followed 10 seconds later with the arrival of an almost nerdy red-haired woman with glasses. Except nerdy-looking women don't usually look like they could stand up from whatever scientific interest they have and then casually walk down a runway in Paris. She's certainly another on who is drop-dead gorgeous, that's for sure, thought Harry to himself. She wore a white form-fitting dress, with cutouts showing some cleavage. Her blood-red hair was tied in a long plait down her back. Occasionally, her head would tilt and her glasses would catch the light at an odd angle and go opaque, giving the girl an almost sinister look. There's no need to threaten Mia, I'll gladly help, I just wasn't sure if it would be wise to expose you to needless danger if word of me being here got out. Musubi's curiosity at Matsu's statement was readily apparent, and Harry quickly realized that Matsu's wanted status by MBI wasn't something to get into at the moment. Harry quickly cut in before Musubi could roll with her train of thought. Great, that makes 5 of us. I'm Harry, by the way, Harry said happily in an attempt to avoid his natural desire to stare and undress the attractive large-chested woman before him with his eyes. I wonder if Sekirei are that way naturally or they adjust something specifically to help make them this way, Harry thought to himself. Then he laughed internally. If that's the case, then Bennett Tsubasa's adjuster must have really hated her. Hi, I'm Matsu. The redhead sat down next to Uzume. All the girls were smiled at the energy coming off of Matsu. Harry mused that it was quite similar to Musubi's natural happiness, with the only difference being that Harry felt Matsu was a bit more Slytherin-like to Musubi's natural Hufflepuff tendencies. In fact, he was getting the distinct impression Matsu now stared at him like he was some side of beef. He would have flirted back, but the potential for Mia's deathly glare was enough to banish that thought from his mind. He also noted that Uzume's happiness and smile had seemed rather forced this morning. There was definitely something wrong there, and Harry made a note to subtly inquire later about it. He turned his thoughts back to the ritual and decided that some last-minute warnings were needed. I want to warn you again, Homura, this will be pain unlike pretty much anything you've ever experienced in your life. I had to have this done to me 9 times. One of the sessions was to remove a core binding that was originally intended to be used on chimeras. They're highly dangerous magical beasts that take dozens of wizards to subdue. That particular one took 5 minutes to remove from me. It is possible to be driven insane from pain curses in the magical world, and I honestly thought halfway through that particular ritual that my mind wasn't going to make it. Your ritual won't be anywhere near that, but it may still take upwards of 30 to 45 seconds to complete. And now I need to warn all of you, Harry said as he looked at each girl in turn. Once the ritual starts, you cannot move from your place. The magical backlash from moving could injure you greatly, and can potentially kill Homura. Do you all understand this? You will likely witness Homura screaming in absolute agony in front of you while the binding is removed. She's a metamorph, you will see the binding holding her to this form break as well. She will revert to whatever her true form is right in front of your eyes. With all of these things combined, can I trust you all to not move once this starts until the ritual completes? 4 heads nodded, and 1 head resolutely looked forward. The fire in her eyes told Harry without question that she was ready for this. In that case, let's do this. 00000. The group of 6 entered the room Harry had prepared for the ritual. Mia was having trouble believing this room was still in her inn. Harry had expanded its size every direction so that the original 5 meter by 5 meter room was now 10 meters in each direction from the center. Intricate runes covered the floor, with distinct points that all coalesced and led towards the center of what could be considered an impressive work of art were it not designed to remove something so foul from another being. Homura wore simple cotton sweatpants and loose white t-shirt. Everyone else had donned a white kimono-like robe made of Egyptian cotton provided by Dabi. Harry directed Homura where to walk as she made her way into the center of the circle. She lay down on her back as she was instructed and her jaw set and eyes stared at the ceiling. The other women were all placed in their assigned positions and reminded to not step anywhere until the ritual had concluded. Each of them was visibly nervous, but looked just as resolute as Homura. They all wanted to see her healthy and safe. Finally Harry reached his appointed position and spoke. You all have 1 candle in front of you. Use the candle to concentrate, first to clear your mind by thinking only of the candle and its flame, and then think of Homura. Be it your sisterly love for her, your concern for her safety, your wish to see her healthy and strong going forward into the future. Let those feelings envelope you during this ritual. The stronger those emotions are, the more powerful your role of an anchor in the ritual becomes. Okay, last chance. The moment I pour magic in to seal the circle, the ritual must be completed. Anyone who does not want to participate, please speak now. No one moved. None present would abandon their friend. Good. Directly in front of each of you is a rune with a double circle around it. On the count of 3, I would like each of you to reach down and place your hand in that circle. This will begin the ritual. 1, 2, 3. Each Sekirei placed their hand on their respective circle at the same time, and the entire runic array in front of each suddenly lit up. So did many other runes around the room that they previously had not been able to see. The only part of the cluster that remained unlit was that in front of Harry and the inner area around Homura herself. Okay Homura, I'm going to kick this off. Concentrate on your breathing for as long as you can. The pain will eventually end, and we'll all be right here for you when it does. Beginning now. And Harry placed his palm on the intricate circular array directly in front of him. The unlit section in front of Harry powered up, an inner circle around Homura finally brightened to near blinding levels. Harry saw the exact moment the pain hit Homura. Her eyes widened momentarily before they squeezed shut. She involuntarily lifted her head up and slammed it backwards into the floor. Tears already streamed from her eyes as her fingernails tried clawing the floor beneath them. Her body tried valiantly to curl up into a fetal position, but the energies that coursed through her from the circle would not allow it. She held out for 10 seconds before the screams began. This was not the fake screams from a horror film, or wails of localized pain that might come from something simple as a violent compound fracture of an arm. These were the screams of absolute mind-encompassing agony. Harry could easily see the magic behind the ritual working, since Homura's form had already shifted slightly, though not by much. It seemed her true form was not all that different from her male form. Slight changes, her cheekbones were clearly visible. The largest change was her chest and hips becoming larger and wider respectively. 25 seconds after Harry placed his hand on the circle, Harry felt the ritual end. He immediately dropped to his knees and broke the connections from himself and the 4 girls to Homura. This immediately caused the still-lit runic circle to no longer glow like a Christmas tree. Harry rushed forward and checked Homura with a few quick charms. It's done. Let's get her into a bed. Harry waved a hand and Homura began to float in the air. He strode quickly out the room and the half-unconscious Homura followed out the door. If Harry had looked, he would have seen that all 4 women still stared without a single motion out the door as the guardian Sekirei passed through it. A few seconds later, Mia shook herself and followed with the rest right behind her. 000. It took around 10 minutes for Homura to fully regain consciousness. While they waited for her, Harry mentioned to the others that it would likely be a good idea to check each of them for similar acts of violation upon their bodies as well. No one should have to live their lives with their natural abilities limited like this. Eventually Homura groaned, moved and instantly stilled. Her voice had changed, only slightly, but it was enough to give her pause. She looked at Harry, and asked quietly, "Did it work?" "Yes, it worked. Your ability is fully unlocked now. This is your true body, the one that's been hidden from you your whole life. With some training, you can be whoever you want to be," Harry softly spoke, trying to stress this in a way that wouldn't upset the women who formerly thought she was male. "You're hot, Homura." Musubi's over-enthusiastic statement promptly ruined the attempt Harry had made to dance around the issue. Homura looked at her, half smiling, but definitely looked pained. Harry understood the turmoil. Homura was hot. It wasn't the hot that was the problem though, but rather the she part of it. "Musubi, I'm sure Homura appreciates the thought behind the compliment, but now is not an appropriate time for them," Harry said to her with a half smile and a quick squeeze of one of Musubi's hands. Turning back to Homura, Harry figured it was at least time to get the clinical part of this over with. "Are you in any pain?" "Just sore. Throat hurts a bit," was the raspy response. "Your sore cause your magical core is way down. Some rest will restore it and relieve a bit of the pain. Your throat hurts cause of the screaming. I can get you a few potions that will heal it. Do you have any questions?" "What happens now?" Harry, who wanted to avoid the obvious question she referred to, decided to deflect a bit. "That is entirely up to you. You don't owe me anything for helping you with this today. I try and live by, there can be no debt between friends. I can, however, offer you some advice. You're now in a new body, there are things concerning it, that you have 4 people here who will freely give you good advice. I'll get you some books on metamorphs so you can learn to slowly control your ability. I may even be able to find you the most extremely unorthodox example of a teacher possible, but I have to think about whether I want to go that route or not. You also need a new wardrobe. I would keep all of your previous clothes as well, since once you master your ability, you'll likely find yourself in situations where you need either set of clothes to blend in. Does that help at all?" Homura closed her eyes, and Harry could see her mentally gear herself up to ask the question Harry knew was about to come. He glanced at Mia, who looked at him with a Cheshire cat grin. She thoroughly enjoyed how uncomfortable Harry and Homura were. Musubi and Uzume stood shoulder to shoulder and bounced like kids who were being offered a new toy. Matsu just looked unreadable. Those damned glasses of hers conveniently reflected the light in a way that prevented clear view of her eyes. "Harry, will you be my Ashikabi?" Her voice was soft and wavered slightly, but her eyes were solid steel rocks that bore the question straight into his soul. Harry knew there was only one response to this. He nodded and said, "I would be honored." He leaned in as she rose to meet him. The moment their lips met, fire erupted from every corner of the room. The instant conflagration was intense in its heat, yet it burned nothing. It passed through them all as if merely air, yet everyone present felt its power. Every color of the rainbow was represented. Massive wings of fire then erupted from Homura's back, first orange in color, turning a deeper color of blue, and then finally white as the kiss intensified. Eventually, they broke apart. Harry opened her eyes just as Homura did. Just as Musubi had yin-yang symbols in her eyes when she received her wings, Homura was stared back at him with iridescent pure white flames for eyes. "Wow," was all she could say, and it was all that was needed. Current residents of Izumo Inn. Harry Potter Ashikabi. Number 1 Mia Asama. Number 2 Matsu no Ashikabi. Number 6 Homura Harry Potter. Number 10 Uzume Chiho. Number 88 Musubi Harry Potter. MBI Headquarter Residence. Manaka Hiroto MBI CEO. Number 4 Karasuba Discipline Squad Member Natsuo Unwilling. Number 104 Haihane Discipline Squad Member Natsuo Unwilling. Number 105 Benetsubasa Discipline Squad Member Natsuo. Previously encountered mentioned Sekirei. Number 3 Kazuhana former Discipline Squad Member no Ashikabi. Number 5 Mutsu, former Discipline Squad member Mikogami. Number 8 Yumi, eliminated Discipline Squad member No Ashikabi. Number 11 Hikari, Seo, Lightning Twin, Doofus, Twin 1. Number 12 Habiki, Seo, Lightning Twin, Doofus, Twin 2. Uzem's pain. Two women walked quickly through the suburban neighborhood. They were not easy to miss, with their silver white hair which stood out just as much as their military uniforms. Both carried weapons visibly and openly upon themselves, the diversity of which was only linked by how dangerous and intimidating the weapons were. The taller woman walked with a natural grace and carried a long katana at her left hip, while the shorter one slouched slightly as she walked, her arms covered to her elbows by gauntlets with massive claws. They approached the inn with caution and came to a stop just outside its gate. The taller women stood there silently, since the imagined reactions of those inside held her firm like a statue in. The shorter stood silently as well and waited for her companion to gather her courage to proceed inside. Eventually the shorter woman whispered, "What will happen, will happen. Harry will protect us, I know he will. And they really do need this information." The taller woman nodded and straightened at the words. The echo of intimidation previously present suddenly emitted from her at full blast once again and wiped away all remnants of her previously wary countenance. Together the two strode quickly to the door of the inn and the taller woman raised her hand. She hesitated a brief moment, then prepared to knock on the door of the woman she had once sworn to kill. A woman who had once vowed to do the same to her. 00000. It now approached noon in the inn, and Homura was now up and about. She was a bit uncomfortable with her body, as her center of balance had changed and she tripped occasionally upon random things. The first time she had tripped, Harry had burst out in hysterical laughter in a way that caused everyone in the room to question his sanity. Even a casually flung fireball from an annoyed Homura couldn't stop his guffaws. Eventually he shared the reason behind his laughter. How the metamorph he had known as a teenager, named Tonks, was known far and wide for her clumsiness. This was because she was always altering her body in ways that gave her an off-kilter center of gravity. When he saw Homura already tripping on things, it brought back fond memories of the woman Harry had crushed on back when he was 15 and hidden away in the accursed house of his godfather's parents. The story was interrupted, however, by a knock on the door. It sounded normal to Harry, but Mia immediately leapt to her feet and ran to a closet he had never paid attention to before. She reached inside and pulled out a katana that matched the one Karasuba had used before he gave her the new one. With the sudden realization of who must be at the door, Harry broke out into a flat run and shouted for Mia to wait. He reached the front door just as Mia wrenched it open, pure venom in her voice and one hand on the hilt of her katana. "I warned you never to darken the doorstep of this inn again." A full demonic intimidation aura now radiated from Mia. Harry recognized what it was and wasn't fearful in the least, but just the exposure to its presence this time made him want to take a shower. It felt dirty and wrong somehow. He was about to open his mouth when he saw Karasuba glance at him and subtlety shake her head. She wanted to deal with this, and didn't want his help. He nodded and glanced over at Haihane. While Karasuba had not even reacted to Mia's aura, Haihane had already fled 3 steps backwards and gave the appearance that she clearly thought that it wasn't enough distance. "We need to talk, things have changed," was all Karasuba replied with. "Yes, I see, you've grown arrogant enough that you believe you can disregard my instructions," Mia spat at Karasuba. By this point they were joined by Musubi, Uzume, and Homura. Matsu had taken one look at Karasuba, squeaked, and hidden inside a closet. They all stood in the hallway behind Mia and stared in disbelief at her voice and actions. Musubi looked like she wanted to say hello when she saw Karasuba, yet another subtle shake of Karasuba's head stopped her cold. The only one out in the open who knew Mia's and Karasuba's history besides Harry was Homura, and she was at a loss at how to possibly stop the standoff between the two Sekirei titans. Karasuba said something next, though Harry hardly noticed. The sounds of the argument no longer reached his ears, because in his mind, he again felt that something was wrong with this whole situation. He looked around and attempted to ascertain just why he felt dirty. His gaze around the room eventually settled upon the katana currently held in both of Mia's hands. The MBI issued katana that was a duplicate of the one that Kara had used up till the previous day. The MBI katana that leaked a compulsion of pure hatred and loathing that strengthened before Harry's very eyes the longer that Mia held its end in her grip. "Mia," Harry said loudly and forcefully. Mia turned her head, a look of pure fury in her eyes that would have sent any sane person quickly in the opposite direction. Harry was neither sane, nor normal. He merely let out a deep breath, and pointed at her katana. "These feelings aren't yours, Mia. It's your sword. The air is thick with hatred right now in this room, and it isn't coming from you. It's the sword. Someone has enchanted it, so that the longer you hold it and channel your powers through it, the angrier and more willing to fight you'll be." "Dabi." "Yes, Sir Har, Eep." Dabi had taken one look at Mia and instantly was crouched behind Harry's knees. "Dabi, could you please retrieve Miss Kara's old katana? The one we replaced yesterday. And bring the brother sword to Kara's new katana here as well." The elf quickly nodded his head left without a word, his only desire to get away from the crazy blue-haired woman with the evil sword. "Could we let go of the sword for just a minute, Mia? Karasuba isn't going to harm you or me, though I would like to see her try someday." Harry wriggled his eyes suggestively, making Karasuba roll her eyes and snort in a very unladylike way. Mia merely stood there, unsure whether to listen to the man who earlier that day had healed Homura, yet seemed to be on a friendly basis with her worst mortal enemy besides Manaka. Eventually her mind overcame whatever the sword was doing just enough to release her hand from the sword. She eventually focused on Harry and said, "And there will be no activities such as that while you are here a guest." "It is hardly my place to argue with a lovely woman as amazing as you," Harry said with a smile. Dabi returned, carrying both swords. Harry conjured gloves before he reached out and grabbed Karasuba's old sword. He turned to Mia. He asked, "How about we trade for now?" Harry extended the brother to Karasuba's sword to Mia. I'll give you the history behind this sword later, but for now, I really want to find out just how MBI has been screwing with your minds through these weapons. Mia took the sword, and unsheathed it just slightly, just enough to gaze hard at the edge of the blade and see a bit of the motif that was engraved into the cool metal. Finally, she unhooked the katana at her side, and gave it to Harry. This is acceptable. May we invite our guests inside? I'm sure they have news for us, and I'm sure they are just as curious to know what exactly MBI has done to these weapons. Mia nodded. She turned again to the two discipline squad members there and spoke with a monotone voice, completely devoid of her usual cheerfulness. My apologies, I have been rude to our guests. Please come inside Karasuba, Haihane. Harry had already moved towards the lounge, and set the two katanas on the table. He made sure to remember which one belonged to which Sekirei, as he had a hunch there might be differences between them. As the rest of the group entered the room, they were all momentarily taken aback at the sight of his eyes when they glowed a killing curse green as he examined both katanas with his mage sight. Kara, Mia, how often do you replace the leather grips on these? Harry asked. He thought whatever was enchanted was under this leather, but he wanted to ask some questions before he removed the straps from the grip. Karasuba responded with, maybe once a year, sometimes a bit longer. Mia nodded her agreement. Well, that's where the runes are. Harry looked at Mia, and his eyes continued to glow the unnatural green color that only Mia and Karasuba seemed to be able to meet the gaze of. You remember all the symbols on the ground from this morning from when we helped Homura? Same thing here, just used a much more sinister way. Harry motioned with a hand and Kara's old sword raised off of the table. This is Kara's old sword. A flick of Harry's wrist and a tearing sound preceded the leather straps tearing and falling onto the table. Engorgio, the growth charm increased the size of the sword to the point they all could see the symbols etched into the steel previously underneath Kara's leather grip. Harry pointed out the tiny writing that was barely visible to their eyes even with the sword 3 times its normal size. See these, every time you used your abilities while holding this sword, a little bit of your magic would bleed into them, empowering the runes. The runes would then cast spells on you, continuously reinforcing them the more they were used. The real question is why it stopped on Kara. These should have built up into some pretty hefty spells if you've been using the same sword for years. Just giving you a new sword shouldn't have been enough to break or cancel them only after one day. It would have taken weeks if not months for the effects to fade. And then Harry realized what had happened. Oh wow, I broke the spells on you yesterday. He looked at Karasuba and continued. Yesterday when we were at that tea shop, do you remember when I showed you the language charm? When I cancelled it and put it back on? Well, looks like I accidentally cancelled quite a bit more on you than just my own magic. You used the sword again afterwards, but that wouldn't be enough to get back to the levels of years of use the sword would have been. Harry turned to Mia and said, which means Mia is probably loaded up to high hell with spells as well. Inwardly, Harry was now cringing from what he realized he was going to have to do for every single resident in the inn. Okay, I think I'm going to have to check out every single one of you like I did for Homura. This will probably take about an hour and a half to get all of you, so let's get started. Mia, let's do you first, since you were the one almost ready to level the inn. It took almost 2 hours to go through Mia, Karasuba, Haihane, Matsu, Musubi, Uzume, and to do a recheck of Homura just to be safe. Harry also had every single person bring each piece of MBI provided equipment that all used on a daily basis. Harry found runes that produced compulsions in Homura's cigarette lighter, Musubi's fighting gloves, a piece of outdated security hardware Matsu was partial to even though she no longer used it, a camera used by Uzume often to take pictures for her ashikabi, and finally, somehow embedded within the rollers inside the bandages Haihane still packed on her even though she was no longer used them. All of them created compulsions on the girls to behave in some specific manner, but Harry's scans were not detailed enough to determine their goal. In the end, no one had any external magic applied to them besides compulsions. A mass finite incantatum was enough to blow through all the compulsions on the women, and Harry recommended they all stop by at least once every week or two in order to get cleared of any stray magic they may have picked up. Once done with his role of doctor, he turned to the matter of why Karasuba and Haihane had taken such a huge risk and stopped by the inn. So what's the reason you stopped by Kara? You could have sent Dobby and not risked blowing your cover. Karasuba looked decidedly uncomfortable with the direct call out on this. I'm not sure why we decided to both come. When you come out and say it, yes it was stupid, but I think I've done more impulsive and stupid things in the last day since I met you than I've done in the past 10 years. This is entirely your fault, Harry, she said with a small smirk that instantly faded. Haihane looked up at being implicated in the plan to visit Izumo Inn. She shrugged her shoulders and lazily said, I'll freely admit, I just wanted to see Harry. This caused a burst of laughter from Matsu and chuckles from Homura. Musubi was confused as normal. Mia, however, simply stared down Karasuba, the years of hatred not yet quite forgotten between the two, despite whether the feelings behind them were genuine or not. So what was the reason you came here today, Karasuba? Asked Mia. Manaka is going to do something incredibly stupid, and he's forbidden the discipline squad from interfering directly tonight. At approximately 10 p.m., he is going to send out a broadcast text message to all ashikabi. There's a Sekirei that was still being adjusted, who convinced her adjuster to take her out of MBI headquarters somewhere. I'm unsure where. While out today, the adjuster was attacked and slashed with a sword. I didn't do it, and I'm pretty sure you didn't do it, Kara said as she motioned towards Mia. That just leaves one other Sekirei out there who could have attacked her. Mia growled, and the entire room seemed to be plunged into darkness, like a solar eclipse had just occurred outside. The demonic visage of a mask seemed to project via legilimency directly through Harry's occlumency shields and appeared directly behind Mia as she growled one word. Matsu. Karasuba nodded. He never did have a brain. The girl panicked after seeing the adjuster attacked and somehow got away. Unfortunately, this was after Mutsu's Ashikabi apparently tried to force the girl to wing. The Sekirei is number 108, Kusano. She's the Sekirei of life, and she has a strong control over plants. Her control is sporadic and still almost purely instinctual, hence why they weren't releasing her yet. Well, that, and the fact she's still a 7-year-old girl. Harry narrowed his eyes at this. This fuckwit's Ashikabi tried to wing a 7-year-old girl against her will. Yes, and Manaka was so amused by the whole situation he's going to declare open season on her wherever she's at, hoping to incite more violence. I can't tell you where it happened. All I do know is the adjuster was Takami. She's one of the few adjusters that treated Sekirei like people rather than things. Takami is currently unconscious in MBI's hospital recovering, replied Karasuba. Homura gasped, stood up and ran out of the room. Harry looked around and hoped someone would explain the reaction. Matsu was the one who provided the answers. Homura was always told she would never likely be winged. She was almost scrapped cause of it. Takami was the one who snuck Homura out of MBI and sent her here, since I assumed she suspected Mia was already sheltering me. They still stay in touch. She even comes by here every so often. Harry nodded in understanding while he closed his eyes and thought. It was obvious what Karasuba was about to ask him to do, and he had no problem with the request. He looked at her as she sat emotionlessly across the table and threw her a softball to get the question out in the open. So what do you need me to do about this? The corner of Karasuba made a small twitch in gratitude for just an instant before it returned back to her stone serious face. Can you head there tonight, wherever she's at, and save her? I'm not asking you to wing her. Save her from whoever is there that would just use her and not care for her. Mia had listened in silence so far, but could not help but button now. Why do you care, Karasuba? Wouldn't you enjoy seeing the suffering of an innocent? Weren't you the one always saying this planet and everything on it was a waste, that all you wanted to do was watch it burn? Mia almost spat the words near the end, the venom behind the words palpable. The final words caused Matsu and Musubi to flinch as she said, burn. Karasuba blinked and jerked as if she had been slapped. She looked up and was about to retort when Harry suddenly stood up. Mia, Kara, follow me please. Mia had her aura of a demon, and Harry could trump that when he decided to channel his aura while thinking of the effects of the Dementors upon himself. This is exactly what he did at the moment. Harry didn't even look to see if anyone had acknowledged him after he said this. He simply walked out the room and into the backyard. Mia and Karasuba followed hesitantly. Neither one was armed with their katanas, but Harry knew that these two did not need weapons to kill each other. He took out a wand and conjured a privacy dome over the three of them. No one can listen or see what you're saying inside this dome, and no one leaves until I release it. Now, this hatred between the two of you. It has lasted for how long exactly? 10, 15 years. I'm beginning to understand small inklings of it, but I think at this point it doesn't even matter whose fault the first transgression was. You're grown women. Hell, the two of you are gods amongst the gods of your own race when compared to normal humans. Karasuba just made the first olive branch to you, Mia. Can you hear her out? This whole Sekirei plan sounds like absolute bullshit to me. Can you seriously pass up an ally like her in this? She's ready to make a mea culpa that I'm not even convinced she should be making, yet she's doing it anyways. Mia looked between Harry and Karasuba, apparently at a loss as to what to say at first. This quickly changed, as she visibly got angrier and angrier the longer she stood in silence. Finally the floodgates opened. She's a murderer, she destroys everything she touches, and she does nothing without it benefiting herself. She's selfish and she holds no honor. Karasuba was about to retort when Mia finally lost all sense of composure and cut across her. She's a thief. Mia screamed, one solitary finger pointed at Karasuba's chest. Karasuba stared aghast at the words, and was about to reply with some scathing retort when she glanced at Harry, who had a look of concern on his face at her initial reaction of hurt to the last remark. Harry knew what was going on. Mia had just as much if not even more blood on her own hands from her duty of running that first incarnation of the discipline squad. Her original complaints were distractions, trifles in the grand scheme of things which Mia herself was as guilty of as Karasuba. It all boiled down to one woman pissed that another once loved her husband. Karasuba looked back at Mia, she opening and closed her mouth a few times while she tried to force words out, but couldn't. Eventually all she could do is continue to try and force out words as tears began to stream down her face. It was Harry who eventually replied and provided the rebuttal to Mia's words. Everyone does things they regret. Sometimes the regret is choosing a path in life that's hard to dig yourself out of. Sometimes the path is hard to change because that person no longer has any hope there will be something worth living for. For someone who has no hope, for someone has had their dreams destroyed, isn't it better to just see everything else burn rather than face the pain themselves if no one is there to help them climb out of that hole? Mia stared at Harry. She was incredulous at his audacity as he brought up a topic no other person on the planet dared speak of around her. Harry no longer cared though. Karasuba had more of a claim over his feelings than Mia could dream of having at the moment. Karasuba's hope in the world was shattered when she was denied someone she loved. She told that other girl on the first discipline squad, Kazuhana I think, has been drowning herself in a bottle ever since she was rejected. Is this normal for a Sekirei who faces rejection from an Ashikabi? Kazuhana is supposedly some deeply poetic person that exists for her emotions and whims. What would she do when faced with rejection? Use alcohol to deaden the pain she feels to this very day and help her forget everything. How do you think Karasuba, a true warrior, would react to losing her chance at the same thing? She did what any one powerful person with no true friends left to temper their fury would do. She went out and tried to destroy everything she could in her grief. As long as it brought some sort of smile to her face. As long as it could amuse her in some way. Do I agree with what she did? No, I don't. Do I understand that absolute need to destroy something when it seems the entire world has gone against you and there's no one left who actually gives a shit about you? You're goddamn right I do. Harry's scream matched Mia's earlier outburst in intensity. His whole body shook and, with a deep breath, he forced his eyes closed. He slammed down on his occlumency shields and as he cursed himself his temporary loss of composure which allowed his temper flare. In the meantime, Karasuba had fallen to her knees in shame and now looked around anywhere but at Mia and Harry. The former now stared open-mouthed at what was likely the first person to raise their voice at her in over a decade and still live. Harry sank to his knees by Karasuba and pulled her into an embrace. He was on a roll, and had easily connected dots in his own mind now that he had a day's distance from Karasuba's version of events from the previous day. And then to top it off, the first discipline squad disbands and the only people she truly knew abandoned her. Then, she got saddled with number 8, who prattled on and on about love and destiny and little birds and who knows what other garbage. Harry looked sharply at Mia. What would you do if someone did that to you day in, day out after you had your heart ripped out and shit on? She did exactly the same as what I would have done and gone on a psycho holiday and killed whatever I was pointed at, on whatever insane missions those bastards at MBI pointed me at. Can you seriously blame and truly hate her? She was winged against her will. And that was after her magic itself was damaged by the failed half-bond she was already forming with your husband. Do you know what happens to magical beings that find a mate and don't bond with them? Most go insane, and those that don't, usually die. Kara's damn strong, so she's made it this far. How many more trials can you throw against her before she truly just gives up and takes her own life? I've seen this before. I've been there before. There's only so much someone can take before they just give up. She's asking to start over. That's why she's out here, right now with you. Do you truly hate her that much for loving the same man as you that you're willing to carry this grudge on forever? Mia had listened to Harry stand up for a woman that she hated. She was still half furious and half shocked by the entire situation in front of her. Her entire universe had been flipped neatly upside down since Harry had run into her in as he carried Homura without any other thought than to help her. This same human had now yelled at her while he comforted the person she had previously considered to be her arch nemesis. This human had also helped one of her oldest friends while he also brought to light more subterfuge of MBI against the Sekirei. She had no clue what to do or think, but her mind was continually drawn back to the fact the most arrogant, and quite frankly evil, person she had ever known besides Monaka was reduced to tears in front of her. What happened to cause this? The Karasuba I knew would never show weakness like this in front of anyone, let alone myself, was the response Mia finally gave. She was neither ready nor prepared to answer Harry's last question yet. Harry happened, was Karasuba's simple response. He's everything I ever wanted before in Takehito. When I met Harry yesterday, everything Yumi always bored me to tears with all finally sunk in. I don't want to be that person I became anymore. I know he's not my Ashikabi yet, but I really don't care. Maybe someday he will be, maybe he won't. Either way, meeting and reacting to him was enough for me to look at life differently. Karasuba looked at Harry and the corner of her mouth twitched just slightly. Harry gave me hope. Harry was proud Karasuba could still almost smile after she had the past decade of her life summarized in such an unflattering way. Now all that was left was to see where Mia took things. Mia stood and watched the entire exchange without a flicker of emotion. Her eyes would simply dart back and forth between Karasuba and Harry, with no indication as to what she was thinking. Eventually, Harry watched as Mia's shoulders wilted slightly and she took one tentative step forward. She took another, and then another, until she was finally in front of Karasuba. Harry backed away, as he figured whatever exchange was about to occur, needed to happen between just the two of them. Mia bent down to her knees and placed her arms on Karasuba's shoulders, and looked her in the eye. I have wronged you, my sister. I kept you from becoming more than you were. I was selfish, and in my arrogance, I cost us both the love of a great man. I'm sorry, Suba. With the apology made, Karasuba fell into Mia's chest. He realized that he was now the intruder upon a private moment, so he canceled the dome and walked back to the inn. All 5 of the remaining occupants of the inn were there, all very curious and worried just what was happening under the dome when it had vanished. Harry raised a finger to his mouth and motioned for them to be quiet. As he approached he asked them all to follow him back inside and leave the two alone together. 00000. Harry plopped down on the floor around table, not saying a word. What just happened had been stressful and dangerous. He felt half annoyed and half ashamed he had lit into Mia like that with Kara present there to watch. The results of it all seemed to be great, but he was most certainly unhappy with the method he'd been forced to use to bring it out. What happened? Putting those two together in a small confined space was a recipe for disaster. I half expected the inn to be left in ruins after seeing her at the door, asked a highly agitated Homura the moment she saw Harry wasn't about to voluntarily provide any details. I think they've put most of their past behind them, said Harry very simply. I'm not going to say much more than that. I feel honored to know the little of their past that I do, and I won't violate that trust by talking about it now. I hope the peace lasts. There's a lot of pain between the two of them still, so we'll see how it goes. The wizard looked around, and didn't like what he saw, so he decided a subject change was needed to improve everyone's mood. Harry looked at Haihane and smirked. Gotten a bit more than you bargained for since you knocked on Karasuba's door yesterday, Are things around you always this insane? Haihane simply snorted in response. Haihane glanced around at the other girls at the table. You all should have seen what he did to the other member of the discipline squad in a spar yesterday afternoon. Bennett Tsubasa was absolutely destroyed by him, and Harry didn't break a sweat doing it. I think she had it coming though. She had a shit attitude, and I didn't like the way she talked to you one bit. It certainly was fun, smirked Harry. What was fun? Asked a disheveled Karasuba as she and Mia entered the lounge. Harry smirked proudly. Oh, I was just about to relive my little spar with Nubs from yesterday afternoon. After an uncharacteristic laugh broke from her lips that caused everyone to goggle at her, Karasuba broke out into a huge grin. Oh, I wish you could have all seen it. I've never seen anyone move like he moves. And he didn't attack her at all. He simply humiliated the loudmouth and then knocked her out. Harry suddenly realized he could show them. Actually, I can show you the whole thing. Dobby. The little elf appeared, keeping Dobby busy today, aren't you, Harry, sir? The elf said all this with a grin that caused Harry to just roll his eyes as the elf bounced and lost the top two of his hats in his eagerness to help out. Could you bring me the large pensieve that's in my private study, Dobby? Yes, sir. Harry Potter, sir. Be right back. The elf popped away. I'm still never going to get used to that little guy, mused Uzume while she shook her head in silent laughter. What's a pensieve? Asked Homura. A pensieve is a runic bowl, which you place memories in. You can dive in and watch someone else's memory as it happened as if you were there observing it. You can't touch anything or interact with it, but it lets you see things as clearly as if you were there in person. It's used as evidence in court cases sometimes. I usually use them to get a fresh perspective on things much later when the emotional attachment of events isn't quite there anymore. Haihane had a huge grin on her at this statement. You mean I can watch Nubs the clown say how she won't surrender to a monkey over and over again? Yes, if you truly wanted to watch that, over and over, you certainly could, Harry replied while he shook his head. I think you can even take cameras into a memory to take snapshots. Dobby popped back in then, and floated the pensieve onto a table in the lounge. Harry walked over, withdrawing a wand as he did so. Everyone else slowly gathered around the large bowl. Alright, I think this loses some of the effect if I show you the memory from my perspective, so I'm going to show it to you from Haihane's point of view. Harry walked over to Haihane and said, I want you to think of the events from yesterday, from the moment we walked into the training room, through the spar, and then all the way through to me walking over to you and Kara afterwards. Begin thinking about it from the beginning, now. As he said, now, Harry placed the tip of his wand against Haihane's temple and slowly began pulling it back. A shimmering strand of liquid slowly extracted itself from her head, being pulled out by Harry's wand. The strand eventually broke and Harry wafted the now floating strand into the air and watched as it settled into the pensieve. That was weird, Haihane chuckled while she rubbed her temple. Oh, the one preface I give you before you jump in is, right before the spar began, Kara mentioned to me that Benetsubasa is very wary of her flat chest and her big ass, said Harry with a bit of exasperation as she watched Kara, who had already begun to laugh in anticipation of what she was about to see again. All right, to start, you just touch the liquid there with a finger to get dragged in. You'll get a feeling of falling, but don't worry about it. That will be over in a second. Harry reached towards the pensieve and placed a finger into the bowl, which caused him to immediately disappear from view. The others quickly followed and found themselves as observers of Haihane, Karasuba, and Harry as they walked into the training room at MBI. They laughed as the stinging hexes began fly randomly from nowhere. Mia smacked Harry upside the head when he made Benetsubasa's breasts grow, even though she still smiled in spite of herself. When the fog appeared and then disappeared, revealing the clown prank, there was absolute silence from everyone's mouths having dropped on the floor. When she screamed her high-pitched response, there wasn't a person who wasn't on the ground rolling in laughter. When the memory ended as Harry asked Haihane if she was ready to go, those present couldn't help but tease Haihane good-naturedly as well. So yeah, that's part of what happened before Musubi sat on my face and Homura tried to burn me alive yesterday. Harry replied cheekily, which earned him another rap on top of the head from Mia. Oh, so you've already sat on his face, Musubi. When can I partake in some experiments as well? Said Matsu while she openly leered, though she promptly backed away as Mia leveled her glare upon her. After some nervous laughs from the people who Mia currently had and threatened death and disembowelment via soup ladle, Harry spoke up. So, 108 is stuck somewhere, and every fool in the city will be gunning for her in a little under, he glanced at his watch, 8 hours. I say we get somewhere central in the city, say the north side of the big park there, and then wait there for the announcement. Once we get it, we head off to wherever we need to go. We grab her, and bring her back here unwinged for Mia to watch over. No one is stupid enough to attack this place, and the wards I'll put up tomorrow will let Mia and I know if anyone comes within 2 kilometers of this place with the intent to harm someone inside the inn. I assume Homura and Musubi will be coming with me? Harry asked, getting definite nods from both of them. I'll come too, but I need to ask you for something as well, said Uzume as she nervously looked Harry, only able to hold his gaze for a second or so before she shifted to stare at a corner of the room. Okay, let's go talk, said Harry. Uzume immediately got up and walked out of the room. Harry looked around confused, but caught Mia's eye. She gave a sad reassuring smile and nodded at him. 00000. Harry found Uzume alone outside the front door to the inn. At that moment, she looked completely lost. What's up? Uzume looked at Harry, the pain in her eyes she had tried to hide over the past day he had known her clearly showed now. She looked away off into the distance and began to speak softly, my Ashikabi is dying. The doctors believe she has some unknown virus that is slowly killing her. She's lost the ability to walk, and she just sits there in a bed all day in a hospital in constant pain. The owner of the hospital is a man named Higa. He has 8 or so sekirei, a lot of them forcibly bonded to him. He's only treating Chiho because he wants to force me to do things for him. Before Harry's anger at what a man could possibly force a beautiful sekirei to do for him, Uzume continued. He wants me to terminate sekirei for him in exchange for keeping Chiho alive a bit longer. I have until this afternoon to accept. Harry was already getting angry at the description of Higa's deeds, but this nearly made him go over the edge. He had only been able to rein in his anger for the sake of Uzume, as the situation clearly had taken a toll upon her to reveal even this much to him. I'll do anything to help Chiho, but she wouldn't want me to do this. I can't just let her die though. You healed Homura when no one else could. You healed all the cuts on Haihane. Can you help Chiho? By the end of her talk, tears were fell openly, but her eyes were steady, her strength palpable. Harry nodded. I'll do anything I can to help. You were willing to help Homura when she needed you. I would have helped you regardless, but I'll do anything I can to help you because of that. I know the others will bend over backwards to help you too. Let's go inside. Looks like we're planning 2 rescue missions for today, Harry said. He conjured some tissues for her. They had big penguins embroidered on them, which caused Uzume to laugh. She had mentioned earlier she liked to wear cosplay outfits in order to cheer up her ashikabi, and the small gesture definitely helped at the moment. Quiet conversation met Uzume and Harry as they rejoined the group. Musubi and Karasuba talked quiet animatedly over in the corner. Homura and Haihane appeared to have traded sarcastic remarks between the two successfully in the corner. In another corner, Mia and Matsu sat in silence at the table. After he sat down and got the attention of the room, Harry began to explain their newest dilemma on Uzume's behalf. Uzume is being blackmailed into assassinating other Sekirei. Some dude named Higa owns the hospital her ashikabi is currently dying in, and he says he'll refuse her treatment if Uzume doesn't go along with this. It was as if the group had suddenly been transported to the middle of the North Pole. The temperature seemed to drop and the lights grew dim. The quiet outside calm demonstrated by Mia's face totally was contradiction to the pure white fury radiating from the woman. Harry had to force himself to continue rather than gawk at the power the woman could casually throw out in her anger. We already have 1 rescue mission to perform tonight, but I would like to do this as well. After a short pause while he tapped his finger mindlessly on the table, Harry tried to rerun through the very quick plan he had come up with in the 20-second walk back to the group. He eventually looked up after a few moments and continued, here's what I would like to do. And hear my whole plan out before you object to one specific part of it. I want Uzume to go to Higa today, and accept his proposition. Simply holding up a hand to forestall any objections to this, Harry turned to Uzume and continued, I want you to ask him for a list of targets, not just one at a time. Say that you don't like going to wherever the heck he's at. You'd rather just have the whole list at once, in case a target presents itself unexpectedly. I'll be along with you invisible in the room just in case. After that, Uzume and I will go to the hospital, and Chiho will check out. I'm going to cast a spell or 2 over all the guards, nurses and doctors we see that makes them think Chiho passed away. Then we'll simply just portkey here directly to the inn. Once we get Chiho set up here, we'll deal with this list. We know Higa has these Sekirei targeted for some reason. I propose we try and find them all. We can tell them what Higa has planned for them and ask them and their ashikabis to come here, or to the property I'm warding as a safe house. This way, even if Higa sends more Sekirei after them, they'll hopefully be safe. I really don't see too many people attacking this place as long as Mia's here. Especially when Karasuba and Haihane eventually decide to go AWOL and show up here more frequently. I can help, eye in the sky, and all that, Matsu said. I can track Sekirei who aren't single numbers or in the discipline squad using Manaka's own satellites. We should be able to find each of them pretty quickly. We'll just need to be careful when we approach them. If they're already being chased, they might not trust what we tell them and they may fight us. Cornered Sekirei can be very dangerous, said Homura with some tiredness still in her eyes. And that's why I'll be going along with whatever mission we send eventually out to find them. The more I get to know this city, the faster I can move large groups of people anywhere with apparition or portkeys. If I take one of those just once and throw up, I'm not going to be amused, said Karasuba as her eyes narrowed. Well, I can always provide you a broomstick, said Harry cheekily. You people actually fly brooms? Asked Matsu in an incredulous manner. That has to be the most cliché thing I've ever heard. Anyways, said Harry as he threw Matsu a mock glare, any objections to this plan with Higa and Chiho? I'd like to leave now if we can so we still have plenty of time to prepare to rescue 108 tonight. Everyone shook their heads, and a grim determination set in on every face. Harry just leaned back in his chair and said with mock seriousness. Is there anything else we want to accomplish today while we're all sitting around? I mean, we healed Homura this morning and hopefully just somewhat reconciled Mia and Karasuba. We're going to do a jailbreak in a hospital and foil an evil villain's plot to assassinate Sekirei. Then after that, we're going to rescue 108 tonight. Karasuba snorted along with a few others when it was all laid out like that. At the sound of Karasuba, Harry pulled out a full-blown lopsided Potter grin and said, I mean, I just want to make sure no one's finding this all too boring. I'm sure we could fit a few more things in there. The only sound to greet this statement was Harry's exclamation as Mia thumped him over the head with a soup ladle. 00000. Uzume and Harry entered Higa's corporate headquarters together. She was again dressed in her typical outfit, capri pants and t-shirt. Harry was disillusioned and followed directly behind her. He had placed a spell over her eyes so Uzume could see Harry's outline whenever she stared directly at him. She was nervous to the extreme about this. Harry on the other hand seemed to find the whole mission mildly irksome. It seemed a lot of the employees knew of Uzume, and their open sneers as they passed greatly tested Harry's patience. The further they proceeded into the hospital, the more complicated the vengeance Harry plotted to rain down upon its employees upon a future secret return trip. He wouldn't kill them outright, just place some permanent bowel-loosening curses on these people. Harry smiled as she remembered the tale of Ron Weasley's trouble with the spell when Hermione had used it on him after Harry had fled the country. There truly was nothing quite like people condemned to shit their pants randomly for the rest of their lives as retribution for their crimes. They eventually reached Higa's office. They had rehearsed what she would say as they traveled to the building. Her goal was to ensure continued treatment in exchange for a list of Sekirei targets to take out. She was to mention Ashikabi's too, since Harry wanted to know just how far Higa was willing to go in his quest to rule the Sekirei roost. Uzume's final task was to try and get as many names as possible for her targets, so Harry and crew could try and safely find them all before Higa did. They eventually found themselves outside the door to Higa's private office. There were two large rather brutish guards outside. Harry did some casual legilimency on them and very quickly determined they were as dumb as a box of rocks. No threat whatsoever to him or Uzume. But at least they looked good while being useless, thought Harry. A knock on the door brought forth an arrogant-sounding voice calmly drawling, "Enter," in a manner worthy of a Malfoy. Uzume and Harry walked in, to see Higa sitting at his desk. He had one Sekirei with him, a rather nerdy-looking grayish-white-haired woman with glasses seated to his left and slightly behind him. "Please have a seat, number 10, Higa said as he gestured to the chair in front of the desk. "Duh, thank you for seeing me," was all Uzume said quietly. "Good, make him think you're already defeated on the inside." Harry smirked internally. Higa seemed quite pleased with himself. The other Sekirei present had sat there emotionlessly as she watched the scene before her unfold. Harry however had only half listened to the start of the while he planted listening charms that would later be tied back to a pen and notebook back at Izumo Inn. He wanted to make sure to dig up all the dirt and intelligence on Higa he could, and he doubted Higa had any method at his disposal that was capable to defeat a listening charm. "I take it you've come to a decision," said Higa casually. "Yes, I'll do it. Just keep Chiho alive," said Uzume in a determined manner, that completely sold the whole deception perfectly to the idiot behind the desk. "Excellent," sneered Higa slowly, with his fingers steepled together and a soft smile on his face. Harry almost lost it there in laughter. All someone had to do was insert C. Montgomery Burns' face over this idiot and Harry would have sworn he had just somehow been inserted into an episode of The Simpsons. Harry saw the gray-haired Sekirei wince at the agreement though. Maybe there's some hope for that one. We'll have to look into isolating and talking to her later. Harry also wondered how many of Higa's Sekirei were winged against their will like every collective Ashikabi besides himself was going to attempt to impose upon 108 tonight. He pulled out a wand and casually did a legilimency scan of Higa while under the invisibility cloak. Harry quickly found that Higa had 8 Sekirei at this point. The one next to him, number 22 Kocho, was a tactical analyst with skills just shy of Matsu, yet had no true skills at fighting herself. She was forcibly winged and hid her disgust of Higa well, but he was well aware of how much she disliked him. He found that Higa had 4 other Sekirei inside the building at the moment. All of them currently under orders to rest and train. The remaining 3 of his Sekirei were out in the city to the southwest under orders to hunt down an unwinged Sekirei that they had chased for 3 days straight in shifts. The girl, number 40, she, was tired and hadn't slept once in those 3 days since being released by MBI. Higa had an unnamed contact within MBI who feed him release dates, so he was able to dog the girl's steps within moments of her departure from MBI's relative safety. He had sent 3 Sekirei on the mission instead of 2 because one of the 3, despite easily being his best fighting Sekirei, had also been winged unwillingly and had been known to go against his orders. The 2 girls he had sent were there to keep number 16, Toyotoma, in line as much as they were there to drag number 40 back here. With this information firmly in mind, Harry decided today's mission scope just got its first secondary objective. It's good you agreed. Chiho will continue to receive the highest quality treatment as long as you do as instructed. Here is your first target, and the bad man reached into a drawer and flipped through a few folders before he handed one over to Uzume. Is it possible to get more than one target? I'd rather know if a girl I happen upon is a marked right away than wait and find out later I should have terminated her. Higa cocked his head and thought the idea through. He glanced at the Sekirei at his side, who looked fearful for the smallest moment before she hid it behind a mask of indifference. Well, was all Higa impatiently said to her. It would be a sound decision to give her as many targets as possible now. It will also help hide her connection to us since she wouldn't be seen entering or leaving this building as often as she would have been required otherwise. Number 22's analysis was cold and direct. Higa thought she obviously had a great mind and treated her as his primary advisor. Then I agree. Here, take these as well, and do not let them be seen by others, or there will be direct consequences for Chiho. Higa all but snarled the bit at the end. Uzume sold it all with an obvious gulp as her response. And the Oscar goes to, laughed Harry to himself. He would need to show this to everyone later via pensieve. Uzume could go on to be an actress someday with a convincing show like this. Heaven knows she had the body for it. And what of the Sekirei's Ashikabis if they are present? Uzume asked with an emotionless mask on her face. If they interfere, do not hesitate to kill them. Kill them in their sleep if you have to, it does not matter. Just do not be present when MBI shows up to claim the bodies, said Higa dismissively. Higa handed the folders over, and then shooed Uzume away. The arrogant fool didn't even bother to dismiss her before he had turned his attention back to number 22. Uzume quickly out the door while she placed the documents in a backpack she had brought with her. The two stepped out into the hallway and walked a good distance from the guards before Harry whispered to her, hurry outside, I learned something in there from Higa's head that we have to move fast to take advantage of. He's got 3 Sekirei out searching for an unwing that they're going to drag back here to Higa. I say we grab all 4 of them, then go bust Chiho out, deal. Uzume nodded in reply and doubled her pace. She casually remarked with a slightly vindictive smirk, if we do it right, it'll mean more chaos for Higa. This should work out well. 00000. They walked outside, and proceeded 1 block up and into an alleyway between 2 buildings. Harry summoned Dobby and had him bring him a broomstick. The elf was back almost immediately and Harry hopped on. He motioned at the empty space behind him while he asked, Miss, would you like to ride my broomstick? Uzume laughed and lightly bonked Harry on the head while she sat down without hesitation behind. She wrapped her arms across his lower chest, and said, "That was one of the cheesiest lines I've ever heard. Has it ever actually worked on someone?" "No, I highly doubt that would work on anyone to be honest, but it served its purpose when you laughed. Good to see you still being able to smile despite all this craziness," Harry said absent-mindedly as he checked over himself to make sure everything was secure. Uzume chuckled and leaned in close, speaking in a sultry voice that just oozed sexiness. "Maybe later then. Your broomstick certainly looks big enough. And it would have to be to handle both me and Chiho at the same time." The realization of just how badly he had lost this verbal spar hit Harry about the same time his cheeks turned a bright red. He pushed off the ground while he cast a disillusionment charm over the two of them, which couldn't unfortunately hide Uzume's squeal of delight behind him. Harry went for altitude first. He knew he was currently engaged in the figurative search for a needle in a haystack, but he had a general idea of where the Sekirei would be from what he had casually ripped from Higa's mind. He turned on his mage sight full blast. Nothing of the natural world was visible to him in this state, only magic. It was an inky darkness where the random barely visible lights for the most part represented squibs. They flew for 10 minutes when Harry exclaimed suddenly, "There they are," and sent the broom into a nosedive. He had seen 3 beacons of light as they chased a fourth slightly less powerful light in the distance. "We're going to land right in their path. I'll do a mass stun. You try and calm down number 40. Her name's she and she's going to absolutely exhausted and maybe hard to reason with," Harry yelled over his shoulder at Uzume through the noise of the wind as they gained speed. As the two got lower and lower, Harry slowly cycled through some occlumency exercises as he mentally prepared himself for battle. A sudden noise whipped loudly from behind and he glanced back and Uzume had somehow willed her outfit to change. She now wore white veils and cloth that whipped around behind her as if they were alive and sentient, completely under her control. Her face was veiled and she was practically naked with the exception of extremely well-placed pieces of cloth. Must be some kind of transfiguration power, changing her clothes around using just her own will, or something like that, thought Harry absent-mindedly while he tried to think up an effective spontaneous strategy that wouldn't get him or Uzume hurt and that would capture the 3 chasing Sekirei as well. Finally he decided absolute chaos and confusion would work the best, since the hunters would be completely focused upon their prey and not notice they were now the hunted. After he blindly threw a mass translation charm at the roof and applied a cushioning charm to his feet, he leapt off the broom while the disillusionment charms upon him and Uzume were cancelled. The rooftop they landed upon was quite large, and she took no notice of them as she ran by 10 feet to their left as they landed. Harry cast a sonorous on himself and yelled, "Hey bitches," and began to launch a wide barrage of stunners at the approaching Sekirei. 2 of them were hit almost instantly, leaving a third to continue on. She had quickly switched targets from she to Harry and seemed quite deft at evasive maneuvers. The woman seemed to figure out right away it was best to not get hit by the red flashes of light that had just taken down her comrades. She was quite attractive and muscular with short hair and darker skin. Like most Sekirei he had encountered, she came equipped with a massive chest that was quite prominently on display at the moment. Harry was temporarily mesmerized for a brief moment as her breasts bounced almost completely unhindered by her sports bra. After a violent shake of his head which cleared his thoughts, Harry fired 3 more stunners at the woman. The first 2 missed easily, but the third was on track to hit his target until the woman vaulted up and over Harry. It was a highly agile move, and Harry easily respected the skill required to make such a move. But he had to shake his head at how this acrobatic leap had just increased the ease at which Harry would be able to capture her. Harry cast a silent aquamenti at the spot he knew she would land, followed by a glacius. The water that appeared and instantly froze into a frozen sheet of black was nearly invisible when compared to the rest of the asphalt roof. The woman, had she been a gymnast, would have received a perfect 10 for as she landed had it been in the Olympics. However, it wasn't the Olympics, and the perfect attack position she landed held for about a quarter of a second before both her feet slipped from underneath her and she smacked her head on the ground. One more casual stunner from Harry and all 3 of Higa's Sekirei were unconscious. Harry summoned the bodies of the 2 other Sekirei over and had bound all 3 together tightly after petrifying them first. Deciding to worry about identifying the possible defector in the group later, Harry joined Uzume, who was keeping her distance from she while still trying to placate the girl. Uzume had ignored the fight as she ran over the chased Sekirei, who now shook violently as she backed away in fear from Uzume. "Are you she?" Harry asked in a quiet voice. He surreptitiously threw calming charm at the girl that struck home without notice. She could have been told the sky was blue by her best friend at this point and not believed them, as agitated and stressed out as the girl was. "Yes, but I won't be taken to him. I want to find my Ashikabi. I won't be forced," the girl yelled. She was absolutely exhausted, her limbs shook and tears ran openly down her face. Her hair was a mess and her outfit was torn and slashed everywhere. The last 3 days since he had been set loose by MBI had obviously been extremely rough on her. "We're here to help," said Uzume while she raised her hands in the air slowly to pull back the veil that obscured her face. "Harry here is an Ashikabi who's helping me. He's not even my Ashikabi. His 2 Sekirei are at a safe house up in the north with a bunch of other unwinged Sekirei. I live there too while my Ashikabi is in a hospital. We can take you to the safe house. You'll have food, a place to sleep, and you won't have to worry about people attacking you there." "This isn't a trick," the exhausted girl whispered in a tone that hinted she wanted nothing more than to place absolute faith within Uzume's words. "No, it's not a trick," said Harry. "There are probably around 10 or so Sekirei who come in and out of the place. Every last one of them, including the 2 I have winged, would kick my ass if I even dreamed of winging a Sekirei that didn't want me." Uzume laughed at this. "Oh, but they would only kick your ass after Mia had killed you. Doesn't that make you feel special?" Harry rolled his eyes, and looked at she. We can help you, if you want to come with us. We won't force you to, but we would really like to help you. To be honest, it's what we do. The girl stood there in blank shock, unable to comprehend the lifeline that had been thrown to her. Harry leaned close and whispered, "Go to her," in Uzume's ear. Uzume walked over and simply held the girl, who began to break down in her arms as whatever horrors she had faced over the past few days finally came back to haunt her. Harry created a portkey with a random empty soda can that was on the roof. "Come on, we'll go back to the inn and drag these three losers with us and let the whole group decide what to do with them." Harry tied the portkey inside the ropes binding Higa's three Sekirei together and watched them teleport away. Harry walked over to Shi and Uzume and said, "This will be a bit uncomfortable. It'll be over in a second or two though. We're going to teleport to the inn. It'll feel like you're being squeezed through a tube, but it'll be over in a few seconds. Just hold on to me." Harry grabbed Uzume with one hand, and wrapped the arm carrying his broom around Shi. Both girls were buried in his chest, grasping onto his shirt. "Okay, ready. 3, 2, 1, and with a pop, all three disappeared. 000. The inn was in a bit of a crisis when they arrived. Harry had the portkey dump the three would-be kidnappers right outside the main door of the inn. Problem was, Homura and Musubi were 5 feet away discussing Harry when the three captured Sekirei nearly appeared right on top of them a minute earlier. Musubi shrieked loudly and caused Mia to run outside. Mia stared at the three intruders for only a few moments before she muttered, "Harry better have a good explanation for this." Homura, however, was already one step ahead in her efforts to try and piece the clues together. She knew who these three were. They were Higa's top 3 bloodhounds and one of the main source of problems for her, the Guardian Sekirei. These three had participated in the capture of at least 3 unwinged Sekirei that she was personally witness to that were now part of Higa's ranks, and there probably were more she wasn't. They were vicious while on the hunt and had claimed at least 1 unwinged Sekirei for Higa a week recently. Homura thought she knew exactly happened. Harry wouldn't send these three along if he wasn't coming here shortly with Uzume. Besides, I think I know why he did this. These three are some of Higa's Sekirei. They constantly are out capturing unwinged Sekirei to drag back to Higa so they can serve him. I bet Harry caught them in the act and decided to bring them back here before figuring out what to do with them." Mia was about to respond when a loud crack echoed nearby. Harry appeared, holding Uzume and a third girl who looked like she had been through a war zone. Mia immediately sprang forward as Harry began explaining. "Her name's Shi. Higa's been having those 3 thugs over there chase her the last 3 days since she was released from MBI. She hasn't eaten or slept in all that time, and I think we found her when she was on her last legs. Can you provide her a room, Mia?" Mia nodded and wrapped one of the girl's arms around her own shoulders. "Come on, dear, we'll get you to a room so you can rest. Welcome to Azumo Inn." She could barely acknowledge the greeting since she was so tired. Her eyes were completely closed and she literally had nothing left as Mia easily supported her weight. If Harry and Uzume had waited 5 more minutes to find her, she no doubt would have been captured. As Mia was about to cross the door, she turned around. "Harry, there will be no violence within the boundaries of this inn. Whatever you decide, please do it elsewhere." Harry nodded and understood clearly the implicit message that was given. If a battle or elimination occurred here, it would attract the eyes of MBI, and that was the last thing they needed. "We still need to get Chiho. I'm going re-stun these knuckleheads and then dump them under a tree over there. Musubi, can you watch them while Homura just patrols the area for now? I doubt Higa will be able to track them here, but I want to be safe. One of these 3 is an unwillingly winged Sekirei to Higa. She's also Higa's strongest fighter. Whatever we decide, I want to offer that one a chance to stay here before we take the other 2 somewhere to deal with them." Homura and Musubi both nodded their agreement. "Uzume, can you take those folders you got from Higa out and give them to Homura? We need to get these up to Matsu so she can get started on figuring out who and where they all are. Thanks for all your help, you two." Harry kissed both Homura and Musubi, bringing out their wings and leaving them both with smiles upon their faces. He fired one more stunner each at the 3 bound Sekirei, and floated them over to a tree at the corner of the yard. They were in the shadows of it, and it would be hard to spot them there unless someone looked specifically for them. "Ready, Uzume?" Harry asked the now normally dressed Sekirei. He had not even noticed her clothes as she changed back into her normal clothes. It didn't really matter which outfit Uzume had on, she looked utterly amazing either way. But this outfit was certainly a lot less conspicuous. "We're going to start back at that alley at Higa's headquarters, and then walk to the hospital. I'll do some lightly memory modifications on everyone inside as we go up to Chiho's room so that they think she just passed away after doctors spent 45 minutes in an attempt to save her. All her charts will be updated by those doctors that think she's gone, and Higa will have everything he needs to think she's dead except for the body itself." She easily agreed to the plan, jaw set firmly with resolve. Harry reached over and wrapped his arms around Uzume in a hug. "Okay, here we go." With another loud crack, they were gone from the inn, Musubi now the only one aware that 2 people had just stood in front of her moments earlier. 000. They arrived in the alleyway and quickly began their trek way to the hospital. Harry was once again under a disillusionment charm so that only Uzume could see him. No one even attempted to hinder Uzume as she walked to her Ashikabi's room. She was such a regular and well-known visitor they practically ignored her as she walked. Which was fine by Harry, as every person they saw in a nurse or doctor's uniform was being hit by spells which convinced them of Chiho's recent death as they walked past. The spells were a subtle thing. They were not obliviations, and they weren't compulsion charms. It was a combination of some very fast legilimency along with a mild confundus which blurred the memories he had just inserted casually through every single person where he had a direct line of sight to their eyes. They eventually arrived at Chiho's room and found 2 guards outside. Harry did not think it was possible, but a quick legilimency sweep told him they were even stupider than the ones outside of Higa's office. Harry followed Uzume as she walked in, the complete lack of acknowledgement from the guards quite rude in Harry's opinion. Another quick confundus and legilimency combo made hid the fact from the guards that the door had even been opened. Harry's first impression of the girl he found inside was that Chiho was a very pretty girl. She was a small waifish brunette who had weathered the ravages of a debilitating illness quite well. She had been staring morosely out the window as they entered, and her face brightened into a smile that could eclipse the sun as Uzume entered. Before their reunion could go too far, Harry removed the spells on himself and cast a translation spell to Chiho. Chiho gasped as Harry appeared out of nowhere, but Uzume immediately grabbed her attention with a kiss that caused Uzume's veiled wings to erupt from her back. When they finished their impromptu snog, which Harry was in no hurry to interrupt due to how hot the two lesbians looked, Uzume spoke urgently, "Chiho, love. We need to get you out of here. It's not safe for you in this hospital anymore. People are using your illness to try and force me to do bad things. Harry here is going to try and help. He's an Ashikabi who has powers that even I've never heard of. Trust him, please. I trust him with my life." Harry stepped forward. "Hi Chiho, I know why Uzume's always staring off into space now with a smile on her face. She's obviously been thinking about making out and doing God knows what else with you." Both girls blushed furiously, and Harry turned to Uzume and smirked. "That'll teach you to try and make me blush, Miss Uzume. Now, do you have any belongings in this room or somewhere else we need to pick up?" Chiho shook her head. "Everything I own is in this room. My parents are dead, and Uzume and I have sold everything I own just to keep up with the payments for my treatments. We have nothing left." Her eyes quickly watered while she said this. She was no doubt scared of what little time she thought remained of her life, as well as scared for Uzume, whose life was irrevocably tied to hers. "Well, it's a good thing I have plenty of money, and a few alternative methods of treatments that normal uptight doctors around here have never heard of before. I'm going to transport you out of here right to the place Uzume stays. There are a lot of people there who really want to meet you." Harry grabbed the few meager possessions that Chiho still owned and put them all into a pile. "Dobby." The elf appeared with a crack and Chiho screamed. Uzume just laughed and hugged Chiho. "Don't worry about it. Dobby's a friend, and he's funny too. Dobby, can you take all of Chiho's belongings here back to Uzume's room at the inn?" asked Harry. "Yes sir, Harry Potter, sir," and the elf and the pile disappeared instantly. "Well, time to go," said Harry cheekily. "Come on Uzume, let's stand her up gently. It'll be easier to transport her if she's standing up and we're supporting her." Chiho was quite weak, and could not even swing her barely functioning legs out of the bed. Harry helped as they stood the fragile girl up. Harry was surprised to discover that Chiho would likely be around Harry's height of 6 feet 2 inches if she recovered her health and was able to stand up straight on her own. They walked her a few feet from the bed, and Harry gripped both of them tightly. "Okay, Chiho, I'm going to teleport us over to where Uzume and I live now. It's going to feel like you're being squeezed through a tube and make you a bit dizzy. Just hold on for a few seconds, that's all it'll take and then it will be over. Ready, 1, 2, 3, with crack, they were gone. 00000. They arrived back at the inn where Mia instantly claimed the primary caretaker position over Chiho. The girl seemed overwhelmed at how many people cared for her well-being. Her spirits seemed to rise exponentially at the merest possibility that Harry might be able to help her. She was moved into Uzume's room, where Mia stated that for as long as Chiho was sick, the rule about mingling would be relaxed for only the two of them. Mia stared directly at Musubi with her Hanya mask prominently on display, which promptly put the fear of God, also known as Mia-sama, into her so she wouldn't think of violating the rules of the inn again. Harry went to work right away once Chiho was placed in Uzume's bed. He went through the standard battery of tests he subjected everyone else to, and was surprised at the result of the very first test when he began reading. Classification. Squib. Well, how about that? Mused Harry aloud. There was a distinct chance with Chiho being a squib that whatever ailment was affecting here was a magical one, which is why no normal hospital had the capabilities to cure it. It was currently 6 p.m. in Tokyo, meaning it was 9 a.m. back in Scotland. Madame Pomfrey should be awake and should be able to correctly diagnose what was behind Chiho's illness. Making a copy of the spell results, Harry summoned Dobby and asked him to take the results to Madame Pomfrey and wait for a diagnosis from her if she had time. With that, Harry finally sat down. It had been a long day, and they still had to rescue 108 and figure out what to do with Higa's 3 kidnappers. Unfortunately, there was no rest for the wicked. Harry decided he was better off not putting off a bit of relaxation and went outside to find Musubi and the prisoners. He collected Homura and Mia along the way, since Toyotama may or may not accept lodging at the inn when asked. The group of 3 found Musubi as she lounged on a colorful lawn chair and sipped mai tais that Harry guessed had been provided by Winky. He just laughed at Musubi's bright smile as they approached. "No one's awake yet, and I got thirsty. Guard work like this is rough." Her smile stopped with a yelp of pain as Mia whacked her over the head. "Alright, let's get this over with. I think the tall one with the really dark green hair is Toyotama, let's start with her," said Harry as he took the ropes off that had bound the 3 unconscious Sekirei together. They were each individually bound and petrified still, so he wasn't really worried about what they would do. He floated the taller Sekirei over to the middle of the yard and set her down on her back. He removed the Petrificus Totalis from her and then cast Renervate to awaken her from the earlier stunner she was hit with. She gasped awake and then groaned from a headache which was the hallmark of extended unconsciousness from a stunner. "Drink this, it'll get rid of the headache," he said without preamble and poured the painkiller potion down her throat. She coughed and sputtered, but didn't complain about any more pain after a few seconds. "Who are you? Why am I bound?" she asked the group that she realized now stood above her. You're bound because we caught you trying to kidnap an unwinged Sekirei. Around here we frown on activities such as that, said Harry. What was I supposed to do? The other two with me would just have told Higa I didn't cooperate and then he'd have them beat me or thrown out. I don't have anywhere else to go if I don't do as he says, the girl said coldly. Were you winged against your will? Asked Homura. Harry noticed the subject was always a sore one for the guardian Sekirei. She took each unwillingly winged Sekirei as a personal failure on her account. It was her job to protect them. For every unwilling bond she prevented, unfortunately 2 or 3 more were occurred she couldn't stop. Yes, the 2 I was with today were the ones who captured me and dragged me to Higa. They're the only ones out of all of Higa's Sekirei that could have done what they did to me. The girl certainly still has her pride, for sure, thought Harry as he verified her statements through legitimacy as she spoke. From her perspective, she was in no-win situation and she still had not backed down. Harry sat down in front of her. Well, we're here to offer you a deal. We're starting a safe house, for unwinged and unwillingly winged Sekirei. If you want to stay here, you can. No strings attached. You'll have food, shelter and your freedom to go as you please. All that we ask is that you follow Mia's rules about living here. What are the rules? Asked Toyotama with interest. There is no fighting, obscenity, or illicit sexual activity within Azumo Inn, said Mia with a sickly sweet voice with demonic Hanya materialized behind her. Toyotama started to stutter immediately at the sight. It was clear she wanted nothing more at the moment than to get away from Mia. I. See can. Do that. She managed to get out before Mia returned to normal with a smile on her face. Mia can provide you a room to stay in. All that she typically asks for in terms of rent is help around the inn with random chores that pop up. There are a lot of Sekirei here, many of whom aren't winged. So everyone kind of mutually protects everyone else, said Harry as he vanished the ropes that held Toyotama down and reached out a hand to help her up. When she stood, Harry finally got a good look at her. She was tall, easily over 6 feet 3 inches. Her body was very athletic and toned, with the only fat on her body seemingly present in the 2 overly large globes attached her chest. If she wasn't already bound to Higa, Harry would have easily found himself trying to flirt with the girl. As it was, however, she was bound, and he wasn't going to attempt to break any bonds on Sekirei until he has broken Karasuba's and Haihane's first. MBI would be given no notice whatsoever that Sekirei bonds could be broken until 2/3 of its own discipline squad abandoned them. Mia took Toyotama inside, leaving Harry, Musubi, and Homura with the 2 remaining prisoners. I say we wake them up, get any additional information we can on other unwinged Sekirei they may be chasing, and then have Musubi and you each take their crests. This way, it makes it so each of you has participated in the plan. Any objections or other ideas? Do we have to eliminate them? It doesn't seem right with them helpless like this, said Musubi. It also isn't right that they chased down Shi for the last 3 days and forced Toyotama to help them. And I'm willing to bet she wasn't the first one they've done this to. You just heard Toyotama say they did this to her too. If we don't eliminate them, they'll just return to Higa and keep doing the same things over and over to other Sekirei. He walked over and gave Musubi a hug. It was a hard lesson that I learned a long time ago. You don't leave unrepentant enemies at your back where they can slide a knife into it later when you're not looking. These aren't Sekirei anymore, they're our enemy. And I couldn't live with myself if we let them go and they came back and did something to you or Homura. Homura had walked over at this point and placed an arm on Musubi's shoulder. I agree. They represent everything I fight against. A lot of Sekirei will get their chance now to find their fated Ashikabi if we remove them from the streets. Are we 3 in agreement then? Asked Harry. After nods were received from both girls, Harry started his long slow walk towards the prisoners. Mia said whatever we do, we can't do it here. So, I'm going to portkey us to the rooftop where we captured them. This way, MBI has no idea they were here. Once done, MBI does their pickup, and then we come back here, eat, and get ready to save 108 tonight. With a deep breath, Harry summoned a fallen branch from under the tree. A quick hand motion turned it into a portkey, which he promptly stuffed between the bindings that held the 2 comatose prisoners. A moment later they vanished. Musubi and Homura instantly moved to his side and allowed him to wrap an arm around both of them without thinking or warning. Harry immediately apparated to the rooftop. Which turned out to be a slight mistake. After the trip was over, Musubi spluttered incoherently and Homura swore loudly at the lack of warning they had received. Oops, said Harry as he stuck his tongue out and batted away a stray fireball from Homura. Don't ever do that again without warning, Harry, yelled Homura. With a rather sheepish grin, Harry walked over and revived both their prisoners. He kept their bindings intact and merely allowed their heads the ability to move. Well, isn't this a predicament you 2 have found yourself in? The 2 girls groaned loudly in pain from the headaches the stupefies had inflicted upon them. But Harry really didn't care at this point. Who are you 2? Harry spat at them. Sigh, number 31, wheezed out the smaller blonde girl with short hair and whip-like weapons on her forearms. Don't give him any information, you stupid slut, yelled the other one, the taller dark-skinned Sekirei whose massive breasts had momentarily entranced Harry earlier. Ah, our first volunteer to provide us with information. Tell me, how many Sekirei have you kidnapped to involuntarily wing for your master, Legilimens? Harry all but screamed the last word, mainly to ensure he had intimidated the other girl. He was not gentle. He learned a long time ago that the occlumency sessions he had with Snape in his 5th year of Hogwarts were not designed to help him learn the skill. They were designed to tear open his mind's natural defenses. The whole process had been a reward for Snape while he brutally and intentionally forced Harry to relive all his most uncomfortable and terrifying experiences. Snape wasn't even that good a Legilimens. His torture sessions with Harry were more akin to a bull in a china shop. Voldemort could easily and quite stealthily tiptoe through a victim's mind without them feeling anything and pull up anything at will. With his knowledge of the two methods, Harry currently utilized something akin to Voldemort's practiced grace combined with Snape's rampaging rhino on the Sekere that had mouthed off to him. To make the process go even faster, Harry had asked the question first so the girl's mind would subconsciously push the related information near the surface, so that it would be made far easier for him to find. Her name was Ichiya, and she and Sai were confirmed to be the ones who had captured Toyotama and were essentially her wardens. They made sure number 16 never got too far out of line and brutally punished her if she did. Under the service of Higa, Toyotama had spent just as much time in the search for other Sekere as she had lain in a hospital bed with numerous broken bones from her comrades. Ichiya had also participated in the collection of not only number 22, but 2 additional Sekere named Oshino and Kuju. That would leave Higa with 3 of his remaining 5 Sekere having been unwillingly bound to him, and question marks over the remaining 2. Harry pulled out of Ichiya's mind, leaving her a shivering wreck on the rooftop. She mindlessly tried unsuccessfully to curl up into a fetal position despite the ropes she was bound with. Sai simply stared at her fellow Sekere with wide eyes, fear broadcasting openly from her eyes as she had no idea what Harry had just done. Only that he had definitely hurt her and she was likely next. And what about you? Are you willing to answer questions voluntarily, or will you choose the hard way as well? I know Ichiya was present when Higa unwillingly bound Toyotama, Kocho, Oshino, and Kuju. What about the last 2 Sekere he has right now? Never before was Harry as grateful for the near-perfect memory that occlumency afforded him, what with the need to remember 4 names like those when he was born a Westerner. They were all unwillingly bound. The only ones of us to react to him were Ichiya and me. We were his first, the girl spoke mechanically, doing her best to remain calm despite what her fellow Sekere just endured. Thank you, my dear. One last question before we wrap things up here. Do you know of any other unwinged Sekere your boss has interest in? No, he usually picks 1 or 2 Sekere per release that he finds out about and sends us after her. I don't know how he gets the information. He's going to do that for the next 2 releases, and then set us loose picking up everyone who is still unwinged. Harry actually knew the timeline and Higa's future plans as well. He had caught glimpses of graphs and projections that predicted he would have over 20 Sekere by the time all Sekere were winged. With the knowledge they had obtained, Harry figured there was nothing else useful the 2 bullies could provide them, so he silenced both girls and flipped them over. The ropes that surrounded them were vanished, but the Petrificus Totalis that prevented all movement from them was maintained. A final wave of his hands banished the tops of both Sekere, which exposed their naked upper torsos and revealed the Sekere crests on their upper backs. Let's get this over with, Harry said quietly, not at all happy about what was about to happen. Each Sekere had a crest, which at this point Harry conjectured was somehow magically tied directly to their magical core or soul itself. Each Sekere was taught a spell, unique to each one, but the effect was always the same. It placed the targeted Sekere in a coma when uttered while the crest when touched. Musubi wandered up to Sai, took a deep breath, and laid one finger upon Sai's crest. By the fists of my contract, my Ashikabi's peril will be shattered. The crest glowed brightly, and vanished. Homura slowly and reluctantly walked up to Ichiya, and lay one flaming finger against the woman's crest. She took a deep breath before she whispered, by the undying flames of my contract, my Ashikabi's fears will be engulfed in flames of righteousness. Ichiya's crest flared briefly faded in the same manner as Sai's. Both Homura and Musubi took a step back and gazed towards the distant MBI tower. Harry removed the remaining spells on the now former prisoners and restored the tops of their clothing. He watched as his Sekere now observed an unwritten rule of the Sekere plan. Any fighter who defeated a foe would remain with the comatose body until MBI picked it up. This ensured nothing happened to desecrate their fallen sisters. Harry disillusioned himself before MBI could see him. 10 minutes after their crests were taken, MBI troops in modified Black Hawk helicopters appeared and promptly took the bodies of the fallen away. They inquired as to who had defeated who, and who their Ashikabi was. They answered with their own names, but refused to give away Harry's. They figured MBI would have no easy way of acquiring Harry's name, so who were they to help them along? The group of 3 watched the helicopters fade into the distance, before Harry walked over to them and held them close. All 3 simply stood in place, watching the setting sun with tears in their eyes. It was now almost 7 p.m. There were just 3 hours to go till they had to save 108. 00000. The inn was in a somber mood upon their arrival back. They found Mia in the kitchen as she busily cooked dinner while Toyotama just looked lost and unsure what to do. Uzume was still behind locked doors with Chiho, where both anxiously waited for the return of Harry so they could go over the diagnosis in more detail. Mia saw the group of 3 enter the kitchen and asked simply, "Is it taken care of?" Harry and the 2 Sekere nodded without saying a word. Toyotama stood in confusion before she realized what the question and response actually meant. She quickly strode over to Harry, Musubi, and Homura and pulled all 3 into a hug saying, "Thank you, thank you, thank you," repeatedly. She was worried Higa would find out about her treachery through Sai or Ichiya if they returned to him, but now that wasn't possible. Dinner was served shortly afterwards, with Harry detailed to go upstairs and float Chiho down the steps. He conjured some pillows for her to lean back against so she would be comfortable. It was a raucous dinner, the trials and the tribulations of the day forgotten, and no thought put towards the dangerous mission they were a few short hours away from. Mia had brandished her soup ladle no less than 3 times each upon Uzume and Harry as they snuck so much innuendo into their conversations they even caused the self-styled pervert Matsu to blush madly. Halfway through the laughter and violence-filled dinner, Dobby reappeared. "Master Harry, sir, Madame Pomfrey sends this reply in these potions." The diminutive elf handed over a piece of folded parchment and 3 vials of a purplish liquid. With everyone waiting with bated breath to hear the news about Chiho, Harry began to read the reply out loud. Dear Mr. Potter, young man, you are no longer an attendee of my school, and yet you still are finding obscure maladies for me to cure. As if basilisk and acromantula or cruciatus exposure were not enough, you've now found a case of a magical disease that hasn't had a documented case in over 400 years. I'm sending along with this letter 3 vials of a curative draft for the ailment your diagnosis identified. The first potion contains a purging draft, which will unfortunately make your friend nauseous for approximately 1 hour, but it will allow for the follow-up potions to be that much more effective. If what I implied from Dobby is correct, your friend was being treated in a Muggle hospital. It is imperative to remove all previous chemicals from your friend's body before the magical cure can take effect. Your friend should take the enclosed potions before going to bed each night, and by the 3rd morning after starting she should be completely cured of the affliction. Please send another comprehensive spell diagnosis similar to the one you sent with Dobby then so I can verify she is no longer sick. After she has recovered, please place her on a nutrient potion program lasting 2 months for her to regain her strength. She should take 1 potion each morning with breakfast. This will help her with regaining the use of her legs as well as recover any lost muscle mass. I hope your friend hasn't suffered long under this affliction. It was good hearing from you, Mr. Potter. Please stay in touch, though I hope to never see you again inside this hospital wing, especially unconscious within the bed with your name engraved on the plaque above it. Sincerely, Poppy Pomfrey. Well, she's as cordial as ever, Harry mused aloud. He chuckled as Uzume had crashed into Chiho halfway through the letter. She now wept in joy that there was a cure for her ashikabi. Mia, I'll provide the nutrient potions for Chiho to begin taking in 3 days with breakfast. They don't require any special storage or anything. She may need some encouragement taking them, however, they taste absolutely awful, said Harry. Oh, I'm sure we can find ways to make sure she takes her medicine each day, Mia replied with that sickly sweet voice that struck terror in everyone but Harry. So what's our plan now, guys? Asked Matsu. Well, we have less than 2 hours till the call goes out. I was still planning on heading to the north side of the Arboretum since it's the central part of the city. When Manaka tells everyone where to go, at least we'll be an equal distance to pretty much everywhere at that point. I agree, I don't see any way of positioning ourselves better than that without any additional knowledge, said Homura. What's going on? Asked Toyotama out loud, since she had not yet been made aware of that night's impending events. A friend of a friend let us know this afternoon someone tried attacking an MBI adjuster taking an unreleased unwinged Sekire out on a rather ill-advised day trip. The girl panicked and apparently has hidden herself away somewhere. The MBI CEO apparently thinks it'll be a jolly good idea tonight at 10 p.m. to tell everyone that a free Sekire is vulnerable and waiting somewhere. I think he just wants to see what kind of chaos will come out of all this. The girl is a 7-year-old. She doesn't deserve this. We're going to find her and bring her back here so she won't be winged by some pedophile. I can help if you want. I just want to be useful, said Toyotama. She spoke evenly, but Harry heard the trace of pleading in her voice. No, I don't want you seen yet. It'll be good for you to keep a low profile for a few days. Higa will already have enough problems when he discovers 18 and 31 are eliminated. When you throw in that you are missing, Chiho is dead, and Uzume isn't apparently doing her assassin's duties, well, Harry broke into a very self-satisfied grin. Higa should be more than a little off balance for a few days. No use exposing you to any danger yet, especially if he manages to convince some of his remaining girls to go on the hunt tonight. Stay around here, relax. Help Mia beat up Matsu. Just have some fun, replied Harry with some mirth. Hey, that's not funny, said Matsu. Harry looked at his watch. All right, we'll head out at about 9:30. Let's be down here ready to depart at 9:15 to discuss anything that comes up at the last minute. That gives us 1 hour. I want to take Musubi, Homura and Uzume. I want Uzume disillusioned so only we can see her though. I don't want it getting back to Higa that she's working with us either if any of Higa's remaining people see us out there. It should only take us about 10 minutes to get there and get into position. That'll leave us 15 to 20 minutes to sit and wait at the rendezvous before all hell breaks loose and we have to move. Seeing the nods of acknowledgement, Harry got up and walked out of the room. He didn't hear Matsu say dreamily, "Gods, he's hot when he takes charge." Nor the yelp of pain she earned from Mia for the comment. Current residents of Izumo Inn. Harry Potter Ashikabi. Chiho Hidaka Ashikabi. Number 1 Mia Asama. Number 2 Matsu no Ashikabi. Number 6 Homura Harry Potter. Number 10 Uzume Chiho. Number 17 Toyotama Higa unwilling. Number 40 Shi no Ashikabi. Number 88 Musubi Harry Potter. 00000. MBI headquarter residence. Manaka MBI CEO. Sahashi Takami MBI Sekire adjuster, friend of Homura. Number 4 Karasuba discipline squad member Natsuo unwilling. Number 104 Haihane discipline squad member Natsuo unwilling. Number 105 Benetsubasa discipline squad member Natsuo. Life and ice. What the heck are you wearing, Harry? Matsu exclaimed as they all finally gathered in the front entrance of the inn. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, Harry smirked. His outfit was flat black with no clear markings or identifiable devices visible. At first glance it was a standard military uniform of pants and thick protective coat, but that's where the similarities ended. Bottomless pockets adorned almost every surface of the black basilisk-lined uniform, though each pocket was indicated by only a small rune that only opened when touched. He probably had a metric ton worth of various items and weapons stored weightlessly within the pockets and Harry instinctively knew where each item was. You'll have to show me how all this works and what you're carrying. Our uniforms were never this good when I worked for MBI, squealed Matsu like a kid in candy store. Maybe I'll show you what I've got hidden in my pocket someday, Matsu. Harry smirked, but the laughter the comment drew was short-lived as Mia had already brought her soup ladle down upon Harry's head. None of that now, you have a mission to focus upon, said Mia sweetly. I'm going to need a metal plate installed in my head before long, grumbled Harry nosily to himself, but everyone heard him clearly. What, you don't have those in your pockets already? Laughed Uzume. Come on, let's go, said Homura, as she stepped out the door. She was all business. A Sekirei was in trouble and it was her duty to protect them. Nothing else mattered in the universe to her at the moment. Mia, I'll apparate 108 directly here once we've found her. I'll bring Uzume, Musubi, and Homura back afterwards, said Harry. The group began their slow trek out the door, but Harry turned back and said quietly to Mia, and if I happen to find Matsu, I'll be sure to bring him back for you to play with too. The calm sweet demeanor of their landlady instantly vanished. No demonic mask was seen, but somehow the power that radiated from Mia was no less intense. In fact, it seemed far worse. This wasn't Mia, the kind lady landlady of the Azumo Inn, or Mia the crazy woman who could intimidate people with weird mind tricks. This was the first time he had seen Sekirei number 1, first leader of the discipline squad, and she obviously wanted her former subordinate's head for his past and current transgressions. You do that, Harry, was all she responded with before she turned back into the house. Good luck, make sure you all come back. I think I've laughed and had more fun in the past 2 hours than I have had more whole life, said Toyotama with a sad smile before she too joined Mia, though the dark green-haired Sekirei gave Mia an extremely wide berth. I like her, said Uzume, as her eyes followed Toyotama walk back inside. Yeah, I think we can trust her, but we should still be cautious around her for a while. Especially with all the unwinged Sekirei that will be around here. I don't want to put Matsu, she, or 108 at unnecessary risk. Probably an unnecessary worry, but it never hurts to be too cautious. If you shout, constant vigilance, like you said that whack job always did, I'll burn your hair off, said Homura. Harry ignored the comment and cast the disillusionment charm on Uzume, and then the sight spell on Musubi, Homura and himself so they could see her invisible form. This is so cool, said Musubi as she cocked her head back and forth, watching Uzume's semi-translucent form shimmer brightly in the moonlight. The two kept waving at each other, doing more and more childish things. Eventually Uzume flashed her chest to the group, which caused Homura to clear her voice loudly. I'm going to fly there on my firebolt, I'll meet you guys there, okay? Said Harry quickly. Homura was stressed out enough already, and Harry definitely did not want to add more strain to whatever Homura had already accumulated while she waited for this mission to start. Sounds good, let's go, was all Homura replied with before she leapt into air and off into the night. She's going to be no fun tonight, is she? Asked Uzume after a bit of silence. Nope, but we can have fun afterwards. Having 108 around will be so cool. It'll be just like having a little sister around, squealed Musubi who jumped away. Not the kind of fun I was interested in, and definitely not with 108, muttered Uzume, who quickly glanced at Harry before following Musubi. Both sets of comments caused Harry to shudder for vastly different reasons. With thoughts of a 7-year-old with Musubi's energy and whatever crazy fun Uzume was interested in pursuing, he mounted his broom and rocketed off into the night. 00000. The group rendezvoused at the north entrance to the Arboretum, and discovered they had no need to wait for Manaka to announce where number 108 was located. So, fair assumption to say the Arboretum doesn't normally look like this? Asked Harry as he observed both Uzume's and Homura's bugged-out eyes. The park that Harry had stopped by and walked through during one of the days he wandered aimlessly around Tokyo 2 weeks earlier was gone. In its place, a massive growth of vegetation had erupted, some of it 30 stories tall. The park was overrun and there were no clear ways inside that were free from MBI goons that patrolled on high alert. The entrance they currently overlooked had 3 tanks and about 24 troops on watch. Number 108 is the Sekirei of life. This is definitely within the scope of her powers to accomplish, said Homura, the awe she felt for the scene in front of her quite apparent in her voice. I don't know what's scarier. That one person was capable of all this, or the fact that Karasuba mentioned that number 107 is the counter of number 108. I don't even want to know what the exact opposite of all this is, breathed out Uzume worriedly as she gestured at the trees that towered almost out of sight in the dark. Death, said Homura ominously. In an attempt to rein in the girl's now panicked thoughts, Harry interrupted whatever else Homura was about to say. Okay, this just means we get some uninterrupted search time. I'm going to fly up above all of it, and search for the center of the whole thing. Maybe I can even spot her with my mage sight. Do you 3 want to follow me inside or wait out here? We can wait here for now, you'll be able to find her a lot quicker by being able to fly so high over that mess. We can lay low here and hopefully you can find her before it gets rough out here, said Uzume. Harry looked at the group. Just be careful out here, don't bite off more than you can chew if some random idiots show up, especially if it's Matsu. You don't have to tell us twice. He may be number 5 and me number 6, but there's no way I could stand against him alone. There's a huge difference in power and experience between us. The 3 of us together might be able to take him, but I really don't want to try, especially if he comes with backup, Homura said while looking up and down the street for cover. Just stay safe and call for Dabi if you need some additional cover. He loves crazy combat stuff like this. He'll probably show up in his own mini-me version of what I'm wearing. See you in a bit, and with that, Harry launched himself into the sky. He checked his watch. He had 15 minutes before Manaka dropped the hammer and sent every ashikabi in the city here. He just hoped he could find 108 quickly. The Arboretum was huge, at least 2 miles per side. The whole thing wasn't infested though. The expansion of trees caused by 108 was roughly a circular growth with a definite epicenter, so Harry decided that would be the best place to start. Harry swooped down with his firebolt, his mage sight only half turned on since he knew he could easily plow into a tree if he paid no attention here. He had always wondered how feasible the speeder bikes in Return of the Jedi actually were and whether to fly on a broom through a forest would be comparable. After 5 minutes of flying through trees in the dark, he finally determined the whole idea wasn't feasible at all. He had to slow to roughly 20 kilometers an hour simply to not ram into every other tree he saw and still have the ability to look around at the same time. The rough epicenter of the mutated growth was still very large and he had not had any luck at all. There was no light, no magic, no anything here. All he found was darkness where his wand provided the only light. There was a sense of fear in the air, one which he couldn't quite explain the origin of. It was almost like the trees themselves had saturated the air with the primal emotion. That's when Harry realized that if 108 had made everything like this, then it was possible for the trees to be broadcasting the little girl's emotions. There was a frightened 7-year-old girl behind this staggering display of power, and her predominant emotion was likely fear at the moment. He flew down to the forest floor. The canopy was so thick he could not even see the sky. Almost no light found its way this far down, and Harry required his wand to steer his broom. After landing he walked over to the nearest tree, emptied his mind, and dropped his occlumency shields. Then he placed his hand upon the rough surface. He may not have been able to feel the magic behind the growth, but he could definitely feel the emotion. Fear, panic, loneliness. But it didn't help him find 108 at all. Harry cast a tempest into the air. 9:55 p.m. 5 minutes left before the announcement was broadcasted. Harry knew his current actions would get him nowhere fast. He could feel the tingle of desperation as it built within him. He had always been great under pressure and most of his craziest and most successful ideas came at times like these. This was the time when he usually shined through with his best. He saved the stone as an 11-year-old even when he had no business whatsoever even thinking he could. He slayed a 1,000-year-old basilisk by himself, which was something that should not have been possible for one wizard. By comparison, Noondoos were an African magical cat that had never required less than 100 wizards to subdue, and basilisks were more feared and powerful than that mangy breed of cats. Finally, when he somehow cast a Patronus powerful enough to drive off over 100 Dementors in order to save his godfather, Sirius. A Patronus. That might be the answer. If the trees were giving off emotion, maybe they could feel it too. And a Patronus was pure emotion. Plus they could be used as messengers, meaning they possessed just a slight bit of sentience for the brief period of time they existed. He figured he had nothing to lose, so why not try something different? He placed a hand back onto the massively overgrown tree he was by, and brought the recent happy memory where he kissed Musubi that morning when he woke up. He incanted out loud in steady voice, Expecto Patronum. A blindingly bright light lit up the entire tree in front of him and sank into the ground. Nearby trees lit up and faded, while trees in the distance mimicked the effect as well. But not all trees seemed to give off the ethereal light. Only trees in a specific direction did. Maybe it was a sign. Having no better option at the moment than to follow the glow in the dark trees, Harry took off and flew about 50 meters in the direction the lights flashed. He hopped off the broom and cast the Patronus into the nearest tree again. The trees once again illuminated with light, though the direction changed course just slightly. Each time he watched for the direction of the flash of light. He was definitely still in the center of the mutated growth, but at least now he had a direction. Dabi appeared after the 4th time to inform him Matsu said the message had just gone out. The CEO of MBI had informed every Ashikabi in Tokyo that the green girl was ripe for the taking, whoever got there first wins. Not if I can help it, growled Harry, and he cast a Patronus again. He went in the direction of the light 3 more times before the light stopped suddenly around one lone tree. Harry flew over to it and searched around its base with only his wand as a guiding light but found nothing. He walked up to the tree and cast one more Patronus just to be sure. The tree illuminated, but no other trees followed. This had to be the place. He cast his Patronus into the air, hoping prongs wouldn't fail him, and that the majestic stag would find the scared little girl. Expecto Patronum, Harry yelled while he silently prayed this would work. The stag burst forth, but did not give the aggressive and protective stance it usually gave when summoned. Normally the stag searched out enemies to confront. This time, it simply cantered a short distance towards the tree, and looked up. She must be up the tree in the air somewhere, thought Harry. Harry hopped on his broom and circled the tree slowly. The broom climbed higher and higher as he examined the trunk and the branches that extended out from it as he hoped one would hold the little girl that was in so much trouble at the moment. 3/4 of the way up and probably 100 meters from the forest floor, he found her. She slept in a hollowed-out nook in the trunk of the tree itself. A low green iridescent sheen of ambient light enveloped her and made the whole area look quite ethereal and otherworldly. She tossed and turned in her sleep though, as if in the grips of a nightmare. Hey, Kusano, wake up, Harry whispered and only nudged the girl slightly. He didn't want to startle her, because a fall from this height would definitely be fatal. The girl stirred and lifted her head up. Are you my big brother? The girl softly asked, with quite possibly the most innocent voice he had ever heard. No Kusano, I'm not. I came here to try and help you. There are a lot of bad people coming, and they are all trying to find you. A friend of Ms. Takami, the woman who took you here, asked me to try and find you and get you out of here. Miss Takami asked you to save me. Is she okay? The girl whispered. The fear she felt was quite evident in her voice. She was hurt real bad, but she's going to be okay soon. Miss Takami is in the hospital back at MBI and she's healing. One of her friends there found out what happened to you, and asked me to come get you. Would you like me to help you? My friend Mia is real nice and is an old friend of Miss Takami too. Miss Mia really wants you to visit so she can take care of you, said Harry. He had to get her to agree willingly. A girl with this much power could easily destroy the inn if he were to just grab her and apparate. Not to mention what Mia would do to him if he scared her doing that. Okay, I'll go with you. The sad girl's demeanor had instantly improved, and a wide smile shone on her face. Cool, they'll both be real happy. Let me bring you onto the broomstick and we'll go down to the ground. Then I can make us travel real fast to where Miss Mia lives so she can take care of you, okay? Okay, and the girl practically leapt onto Harry, which thoroughly scared the living daylights out of him. She came dangerously close to smacking their heads together, which played to Harry's deep overriding fear that the girl would kiss him and wing herself to him. He definitely didn't need to go to an early grave over something like that, because that's exactly where Mia would send him if he happened to wing a 7-year-old. He quickly used magic to turn Kusano around and held her tightly in front of him on the broom. They flew down to the floor, and Harry landed with the softest landing he possibly could. Okay, very last thing we need to do before we go. We're going to pop over to Miss Mia's place. It'll be weird for just a bit as we travel. We'll be traveling really, really fast, and it'll feel like you're going through a straw. You know what a straw is, right? Yes, silly, I know what a straw is. You're stupid. Aren't kids amazing? Thought Harry, who was quite aware of how much time had passed since he last talked to Dobby. Good, because I'm going to take you to Mia now, okay? Hold on to me real tight. Ready, 3, 2, 1, and with a crack they were gone. 00000. Mia, I've found her, Harry yelled as they appeared. Kusano just held onto his hand as she laughed loudly, said that was fun, and asked if she could do it again. Only a Sekirei child would be insane enough to like apparition and think of it as a toy, groaned Harry internally. Mia burst out of the inn, followed closely by Toyotama. Mia took one look at Kusano and said, "Oh my goodness, aren't you the most precious thing?" Harry leaned in and whispered to Mia, "Took me a while to find her. She was about 100 meters in the air in the trunk of a tree in the arboretum. I doubt anyone else would have been capable of finding her up there. I'm just happy she didn't fall out. There's no way she would have survived a fall that high." Mia nodded her agreement to that guess. "I'm going to head back and find the others and let them know. Hopefully Manaka has no way of knowing tonight's entertainment has already ended before it could begin," Harry said as he looked at his watch. It was 10:07 p.m. Yep, definitely over before it began, Harry said to himself inwardly and smiled despite the seriousness of the situation that still existed. "You two good here?" he asked Mia while half turned to the side, prepared to apparate back to where he had left the 3 girls. "Yes, we'll be fine. I'll get her into a bath, get her some new clothes, and some food into her. She should be just peachy after that," said Mia with a smile. "Good job, Harry. Nice to know there are some men in this world that aren't scum," said Toyotama with a smirk. Harry rolled his eyes and laughed, nodded, and began to walk away, while he said, "Well, you just haven't known me long enough, Tama. Don't hesitate to ask Winky for help, Mia. She loves to help take care of children." With that Harry apparated back to the north end of the arboretum. 00000. With a purposefully loud crack, Harry reappeared in the street where he had left the girls before, which was now strangely deserted. The MBI troops had pulled out with the announcement. They probably had not wanted to get caught in the crossfire of multiple Sekirei and Ashikabi in a race. He looked around and saw nothing. The girls either had hidden themselves well, or they had run into trouble and had to flee. "I hope they're not in trouble," thought a very paranoid and worried Harry. "I should have given them portkeys, damn." He had taken 10 steps towards the arboretum entrance nearby when he heard 3 soft taps nearby. A quick glance behind him saw Homura, Musubi and Uzume appear from thin air. "We were across the street on top of the building over there, just peeking over to see if anyone would come," said Homura. "Did you find her?" asked Musubi excitedly. "Shish, quiet, not so loud," hissed Harry at her. "Yes, I found her, and she's already back at the inn with Mia." "Thank God," breathed Homura in relief. Uzume and Musubi were smiling as well. "Looks like we accomplished everything we set out to do today." An arrogant voice interrupted their conversation however. Well, long time no see." Homura looked up and narrowed her eyes as she recognized the speaker. "Speak of the devil, if it isn't number 43, Yomi." "Don't worry Homura, you're not the target tonight. I came here to collect the green girl." Like the message said, "The first one there wins," said Yomi with a feral gleam in her eyes. She was a brunette with a rather ridiculous dress with oversized shoulders on. She carried a massive scythe on her back, and if she had been a male, Harry would have easily joked that she seemed to be overcompensating for something. "She appears to not realize you've been winged," whispered Harry to Homura. Homura just sneered out loud at Yomi's previous comment. "I'd never let anyone who said something so stupid get their hands on number 108. I had a feeling you would say that, but I'm on a schedule and don't have time for you," with a smug arrogant look that told everyone there she felt they weren't worth her time. Yomi looked over her shoulder. "Akatsu," she called out loud. Another Sekirei appeared. The newcomer was stunningly beautiful, yet didn't seem to display any emotion whatsoever. Her most prominent feature besides her supermodel looks was the Sekirei crest tattooed on her forehead rather than her upper back. She landed with a subtle grace from wherever she had jumped in from and walked lightly forward. "Keep our guardian friend busy, would you? And don't bother coming back to Mikogami if you fail, Akatsu." Yomi sneered the last at her supposed ally, and jumped forward to enter the forest. Harry was amazed at her arrogance as she thought she could insult a group of combat experienced fighters and then jump directly over them without retaliation. Harry simply nailed Yomi in the forehead with an overpowered stunner that snapped her head back so violently it probably gave her whiplash, and then cast a disillusionment and tracking charm on the falling body. He may have forgotten to place a cushioning charm that would have prevented her from breaking bones as she slammed to the ground unconscious, but Harry realized he couldn't always be perfect. Don't worry about that one, said Harry as he gestured to the air where their opponent had just been. I already stunned her as she flew over. You guys see where she landed, right? Seeing all three nod, Harry continued, Uzume, Musubi, you guys go into the forest about 10 meters in and hide. Act like you're chasing that acrobat into the arboretum. Let me talk to this one with Homura. Yomi seems to treat her like dirt, and I'm always up for more allies, okay? Okay Harry, but be careful. This one's strong, and she's a scrap number. So she'll be dangerous, said Uzume cryptically before her and Musubi jumped into the forest and hid. Comprehension of what Uzume said had not quite settled into Harry's brain yet, but he couldn't afford to be distracted with a potential enemy 30 meters away on the other side of the street. Harry turned with Homura as they brought their attention back to the stoic Sekirei in front of them. She wore an open-chested ensemble in white that hung in curtains from her that was tied together with chains throughout the outfit. The metallic loops seemed to be the only thing that kept her massive cleavage from spilling outwards. Harry walked slowly towards Akatsu in the least threatening way he possibly could manage. While he did so, he barely gestured with one of his hands and cast a translation charm on her before he asked out loud, does she normally talk down to you like that? That girl didn't seem very nice. Don't worry about her. I'm your opponent. If I fail the task my master gave me, I will be thrown away, again. Just like before. I must do this, said Akatsu as she reared back and flung a massive volley of razor-sharp conjured ice at both Homura and Harry. Homura began to charge up some fire, but before she could unleash the conflagration at the projectiles, a wave of Harry's hand turned all the projectiles into water, which splashed harmlessly against them. So what the heck is a discarded number? Asked Harry in a conversational tone loud enough for Akatsu to know he had inquired. Remember I told you about her, she's like me. We were the guinea pigs for MBI. Akatsu and I were first two numbers worked on after the first 5. Only they took everything one step further with her. She can't wing, she can't have an ashikabi. Even if she finds the one she's supposed to be with, they won't ever bond, Homura said sadly, while keeping one eye on Akatsu as she said this loudly enough that Akatsu could hear the conversation as well. So all the experiments they did to you, they did even worse to her, Harry said with disgust in his voice. Nothing angered Harry more than when he heard about people being abused. Since he had been a victim of both child and magical abuse, situations like this were one of the few times Harry would lose focus and make rash decisions in the name of helping others. He had already let his guard down the previous day when he confided information to Mia after he heard about Homura's abuse. The careless way he given away many of his secrets the previous day in the inn had only occurred since he had been mentally exhausted after surprise had hit him the previous day. Granted, it had turned out okay in the end, but here he was again in almost the exact same situation as the previous day, and he unfortunately had already forgotten his self-promises to be more careful and diligent. I swear we're going to have a party at MBI someday, and kill every adjuster we find in there after what they've done to you all, said Harry finally after his rage had barely reigned in after he encountered yet another victim of MBI's abuse. Akatsu just stood there and listened. She made no indication she agreed or disagreed with what was said. Harry could get no read on the woman, and wasn't quite close enough to try to use legitimacy on her. What's your number, Akatsu? I don't have a number. I am discarded. I am nothing. You are not nothing, and don't let them place labels on you like they obviously did for you to say that so automatically, said Harry. He paused and tried to think of how to get through to this woman. Just from that exchange, Harry realized she likely had an inferiority complex from hell, just as Harry did at 11 fresh from his relatives' lovingly administered beatings. Harry briefly glanced at her with mage sight and gasped. This woman was on the same level of power as Mia or Karasuba. The magic behind the girl was insane when compared to most of the normal Sekirei, and yet it didn't look like she believed she had any real worth at all. I am nothing, thought Harry as he puzzled over her words. They say things like that to make you think you're less than you are. They do it because they're afraid of you. They're absolutely terrified of what you'll do the day you realize you're stronger than all of them. That nothing in the world can hold someone like you back. The only reaction Harry received after his monologue was Akatsu's silence as she looked back and forth between Harry and Homura. He could not tell if from her face if currently pondered the upcoming possible fight or if she was merely quiet as she thought about his words and questions. So you have to do what your master says because he's threatened to throw you away. Like some piece of trash. You know you're more than that. You're easily twice as strong as that little girl who insulted you and jumped into the forest. You're not a thing, Akatsu. You're a person. You're a Sekirei. What is your number, Sekirei? Said Harry forcefully. Homura had stood there wide-eyed as she watched Harry this entire time. She had no idea why Harry tried to talk to the broken woman. They were dangerous, unpredictable. But then again, so was Harry from what she had seen so far. She had started to understand him a bit more throughout the day. He had a natural urge and tendency to want to help people in need, even if he downplayed it. With this realization, all she could think to do was stand by his now side while he continued whatever he intended to do and protect him if it went bad. Akatsu still remained silent. She had not attacked though, so Harry took that as at least a small good sign. Harry took a deep breath and walked forward. He quietly asked, "What was your number before they took it away from you?" "Please tell me." Harry looked into the eyes of the woman now that he was close enough and was almost driven to a knee by what he saw through legitimacy. Pain, rage, inadequacy, and a complete absence of hope. "I was number 7, Akatsu finally said, in a quiet whisper only Harry could hear. In a voice as equally soft, that only Akatsu could hear in response, Harry said, "Number 7, Akatsu. The Ice Sekirei. You know this is Homura, the Fire Sekirei with us. Number 6. You two should have been sisters. Binary opposites to each other. Just like the green girl in there has her opposite with number 107 from what I hear. But instead, those bastards experimented on you. Both of you. They tried taking away everything that made Homura special, but I was able to help her. I was able to undo what they did to her. Will you let me try the same for you? Harry had no clue if he had made any headway at all with the woman who stood before him. She stood impassively as she watched both of them, with the rage and mistrust that festered in her mind only visible to Harry through her eyes. But he also something else that wasn't there before, just a glimmer of hope. You won't owe us anything if you come. You'll have a place to live, eat, and even family and friends to be with if you want them. For as long as you want them. It's safe there. No one would dare attack us where we live, considering just who we live with. And you will never have to call someone master again. Nor will you ever have to wear chains again, said Harry as he gestured to the metal links holding her close together. You're not a slave, Akatsu. You're the Ice Sekure, you're number 7, and we'd like you to join us. Harry walked up, and held out his hand to the woman. He had no idea if he could block her attack at his range if she decided to reject the offer. He figured the basilisk hide woven into his combat uniform would protect him from most of the magical damage, but he was far from certain. Harry would look back upon this moment later and wonder just what on God's earth possessed him to do what he just did. He readily admitted that he was nuts to have said everything he did and for taking the risk to himself and his girls when he made this offer. All he could say was that he had no idea why he wanted so badly to help this woman. When he dealt with threats to himself, he was as Slytherin as anyone could come. He designed plots within plots so that when he took down one enemy, he implicated a second enemy in the crime. But when faced with someone potentially in distress, and a damn hot one like Akatsu for that matter, Harry would still suffer bouts of Gryffindorism that worried him greatly in retrospect. Akatsu had given no indication whether she would accept the offer or begin to rain curtains of icicles down upon them. The emotions from her eyes rapidly fluctuated from rage to hope to suspicion back to rage again. Several moments passed with no change or movement. Harry could feel the tension as it built, even a drop of sweat as it slowly went down the small of his back despite the cooling charms on his combat uniform. Finally, Akatsu stepped forward and took his outstretched hand. We won't let you down, said Harry simply. She just looked at his for a moment, and gave a slow small nod. Harry smiled at her and guided her over to Homura. Homura, I'd like you to meet your sister. Sekure number 7, Akatsu, Harry said with a smile on his face. Hello again Akatsu, I see you've met my fearless, and after she turned towards Harry, and utterly insane Ashikabi, Harry, said Homura while she pulled down the mask from her mouth and smiled while she grasped Akatsu's outstretched hand with both of hers. Hello, yes, he does seem rather reckless, doesn't he, Akatsu said while she looked at him. He couldn't tell whether or not in the low light she was smirking or not. Everyone's a critic, Harry grumbled. Harry looked back at the entrance to the arboretum and yelled, Okay Musubi, you can stop hiding over there. Musubi jumped out from the behind the gate and quickly ran up. Uzume followed her while still invisible. Musubi smiled in a very enthusiastic manner at Akatsu, while Uzume watched the whole scene in a much more guarded manner. Hello, I'm Musubi, number 88. I'm a fist type. I'm Akatsu. Harry nudged her at the way she stopped. I was number 7, she finished quietly. And you still are, Harry said pointedly. Don't let anyone belittle you. And if anyone calls you discarded or anything of that nature ever again, let me know. I'll deal with them. Aren't you going to introduce yourself Uzume? Asked Musubi as she turned and spoke to what in theory was thin air to Akatsu, forgetting that Uzume was supposed to be there in secret. Musubi, no one is supposed to see or know she's here with us, groaned Homura. Akatsu creased her brows, trying to decipher what bit of information had been let slip that wasn't being explained. Harry sighed as he saw this reaction. This wasn't how he wanted to potentially reveal magic to Akatsu, so he decided to go with the half-truth method for time being. There's a third Sekure standing here that you can't see because I made her invisible. It's just something I've learned I can do. She's not one of my Sekure, but she's a good friend. We're trying to keep it quiet that some Sekure are allied with us that are either unwinged or with another Ashikabi. Helps us to stay under the radar for the time being and avoid too much attention. Sorry for the deception on that. Sorry, Harry, moaned Musubi loudly to Harry, quite upset for her forgetfulness. Don't worry Musubi, it was an honest mistake, said Harry kindly. Very understandable, thank you for telling me, was all Akatsu said. Well, how about we deal with Yomi over there before heading back to the inn? I'm sure our landlady will be thrilled to have her 4th new guest in one day, said Harry with a lopsided grin. Yes, and you can be the one to tell her, since you're responsible for bringing us all the new guests, said Homura. And give us ample warning, so we can go to the other side of the city first. Details, said Harry dismissively as he reached Yomi. Harry waved his hand, and Yomi appeared from thin air, still unconscious from the stunner Harry hit her with. Akatsu gave no reaction to the suddenly appearing woman, but definitely did not take her eyes from her former ally. So, do we just abandon her here and hope her Ashikabi picks her up, or do you want to eliminate her? You have input into this as well, Akatsu. I personally have no knowledge of the girl other than her being quite nasty to you as she left you alone here versus 2 Sekure to go chase 108 all by herself, asked Harry. She's part of Mikogami's bloodhound squad. Just like the 3-person squad you and Uzume took out earlier today that belonged to Higa. Her and Mutsu have been working together for the last few months to forcibly wing Sekure to Mikogami, said Homura. Akatsu blinked for a few moments at hearing that the hidden Uzume and Harry took out Higa's feared gang of kidnappers by themselves. Returning to the present and the implied question, she said simply, she is not a nice person. Well, that settles it then, said Harry. Musubi, would you care to take her crest, and we'll wait here for MBI to show up and then we'll head home. Okay, but I really don't like this part. We didn't defeat her in battle, said Musubi sadly. I know Musubi, but she also would run right out again and help kidnap more Sekirei. Don't you want everyone to have the chance you got? To meet the person they react to? We don't stop her, I'll guarantee other girls will suffer cause of her, said Harry in response. She reached down and flipped Yomi over. She pulled down the back of her dress and recited the words she did before while she lay one finger on Yomi's crest. By the fists of my contract, my Ashikabi's peril will be shattered. The Sekirei symbol on Yomi's back glowed brightly before it faded away. It's done, said Homura. As Musubi took up her position guarding the fallen body, Harry suddenly thought of something. Akatsu, what was your evacuation plan if you had to leave or something went wrong? Mikogami is around the corner in his limousine. He is probably observing this chain of events and quite angry at the moment, responded Akatsu in her even voice, which caused everyone to suddenly turn to stare down the street. As if the words themselves were prophetic, a limousine peeled out from behind a nearby building at that exact moment and raced straight towards them. Harry realized they weren't going to stop, and he personally wouldn't be able to escape without injury unless he used magic. Then he realized Mikogami was the Ashikabi that wanted to throw out Akatsu if she failed. He was also the same Ashikabi that had gone after Kusano to start the whole mess that night. Very quickly, Harry found his ideas of escape quickly overshadowed by those of vengeance. He transfigured a section of the road directly in front of them into a solid 10-foot thick slab of concrete with his father's wand. He lifted it just slightly and threw a sticking charm underneath it. The whole spell chain took only a few seconds. The car couldn't swerve and plowed straight into the wall. Half the car pancaked into the concrete slab, which didn't even twitch with the sticking charm under it. Holy shit, said Homura and Uzume together simultaneously. Akatsu, initially shocked at the concrete's sudden appearance, cocked her head and looked vaguely in Uzume's hidden direction. Musubi had no clue what was going on, but happily figured another fight might happen. She ran forward around the corner of the block and took a defensive stance. As he stepped around the block himself, Harry realized the driver never had a chance and obviously died instantly on impact. No skin off of his back, the driver was about to try and run him over. The farthest passenger door from the front of the limo suddenly creaked open and a man with an orange scarf around his neck stumbled out. He had a sword at his side and was carried a child dressed in a ridiculous white outfit. Harry recognized the man instantly from a picture Matsu had shown him earlier when they discussed the first discipline squad. Number 5, Matsu, which meant that the little boy he was carrying was likely Mikogami, Akatsu's master. He's the one who threatened to throw her out like trash if she failed him, growled Harry internally as he realized this. Harry saw red. He hated bullies. He had gone his whole life as he grew up completely unprotected from them, and now would never allow one to go unpunished if they crossed him. However, Mikogami now lay before them injured somewhat badly, so there was no point in smacking the kid around for his misdeeds now, even if he did deserve it. But that certainly didn't negate Matsu's role in attacking Takami earlier today, which thereby set off the whole green girl fiasco they had just endured. Harry yelled, "Scatter!" to the women that surrounded him and ran forward. Matsu tried to hold Mikogami under one arm while he reached for the sword at his side. Harry threw a chain of repeated stunners at Matsu, who managed to dodge all the bolts while he simultaneously kept his grip on his Ashikabi. Then, Harry watched as the hand Matsu flailed blindly at his side closed down around the scabbard of this sword. Smashing point, he yelled as he slammed the tip of sword scabbard into the ground. A huge pulse emitted from the sword. Harry instinctually apparated behind Matsu. A pulse of magic preceded a huge crack that opened in the street and extended at least 50 meters in a straight line from where Harry just stood and easily reached past the entrance to the arboretum and extended inwards out of sight. With the apparition, Matsu had no clue where his foe was other than his Sekirei. He looked wildly left and right while trying to shield Mikogami and hold the sword at the same time. But he never once looked behind him and never once heard Harry's silenced footsteps as he stunned Matsu in the back. Number 5 fell backwards unceremoniously while dropping Mikogami on his face. At least the little shrimp's nose made a pleasing sound just now, no. Laughed a clearly satisfied Uzume as she walked up. Akatsu, who had not wandered far from Harry after he said scatter in an attempt to protect him, stopped and stared when she clearly heard Uzume speak for the first time. She stood with her eyebrows furrowed and gazed at the space where she assumed the Sekirei was hidden. Do you think our landlady will appreciate seeing her old friend Matsu tonight? Asked Harry while he looked at Homura as she approached the reassembled group. She definitely has a problem with him, that's for sure. I'm sure MBI will do something with Mikogami as well when they get here to collect Yomi, so no need to worry about leaving him here like that, said Homura. MBI will give medical care to Ashikabis. Asked Harry. As long as they still have one Sekirei out there they will. It's not very well known, but it has happened a few times, responded Homura. What? Shouted Uzume. Chiho went through all that and I could have just taken her to MBI to get healed. Why did no one ever tell us about that before we left MBI? Not sure, I just know from seeing two-winged Sekirei take on a certain loud blonde water using Sekirei to try and forcibly wing her. In the aftermath of the fight the Ashikabi got a little too close and mouthy and paid the price. Homura sighed while she shook her head at the memory. Okay, I see the helicopter. I personally would rather my identity remain a mystery for the time being. Especially since I think they might not be happy with having to fish Yomi's body out of that crevasse now. No need to stick around here now. Gather around and I'll make a portkey to take us home. Harry summoned 2 pieces of broken concrete from the front of the car wreck. He held his hand over one and it pulsed with a soft blue light before fading. He tossed it on Matsu and he instantly vanished. Harry looked at Akatsu and held up the stone. I'm going to make this piece of concrete into a portkey. This will teleport us directly to the place we stay at. Everyone hold on tight to it and each other. It'll be fairly uncomfortable, but the trip will only last a few seconds before it's over and we arrive where we are going, okay? The 5 individuals held tight to one another while they gripped the busted piece of rock. Harry waited for everyone to grab onto each other and the stone before putting one arm around Akatsu's back. He held the other hand above the stone and said, "Portus," as he lowered his hand to join the rest that touched it. The stone softly glowed blue before the entire group vanished from sight. 00000. The group arrived with a loud thump and found themselves in a pile in the grass. Matsu was 10 feet to their left, still unconscious. Harry threw an extra stunner at him again just to be sure. Someone that powerful was not about to get loose if he could do anything to prevent it. Homura regained her bearings from those sprawled across the ground first. "Don't ever do that again." That was even worse than the other way of traveling. Homura was hitting Harry to punctuate the words, while he just laughed. "I don't feel so good now," said Musubi, turning a distinct green color. Akatsu, who somehow remained standing on her first every portkey, seemed outwardly unaffected by the portkey, but said slowly, "I believe I will walk next time." Uzume just smirked, and said nothing as Harry removed the disillusionment from her. She had survived multiple side-along apparitions that afternoon and thought the portkey was nothing compared to those in a broom ride from Harry. And her arrival at home just meant she got to go climb into bed with Chiho. Fine, we won't use portkeys for short-range travel. But if you guys want to go to Australia or the United States in seconds rather than fly there for hours, we'll see what you say then, said Harry as he walked off to find Mia and introduce their new house guest. Mia was in the kitchen when the group walked in. Musubi had bailed halfway there to run into the bathroom. The portkey obviously affected her more than the others. Mia saw them all enter the room, but caught her in confusion after seeing Akatsu standing there instead of Musubi. "Where is Musubi, and who is our new guest?" "We took a portkey back. Another travel thing I can do." It apparently didn't agree with Musubi and she's in the bathroom. "This," said Harry as he gestured towards the quiet brunette, "is Akatsu, number 7. She needs our help too." Toyotama's reaction stared wide-eyed at Akatsu, but Mia only briefly glanced at the Sekirei crest on her forehead before she said, "Welcome to Izumo Inn, Akatsu. You can stay as long as you follow the 3 rules. No fighting, no obscenity, and no sexual contact." Akatsu showed the first emotion Harry had seen her give since they met the moment they walked into the kitchen. Shock. She obviously recognized who Mia really was, and replied to her offer with, "Thank you, Mia. You were always kind to me at MBI, and I thank you for your continued generosity." Mia only gave a sad smile. "It has been a long road, hasn't it, number 7? Come with me, I'll show you to your room. Winky, could you finish the food for Kusano?" "Yes, Mrs. Mia, I will." "Thank you, Winky," said Harry, who turned to Mia and whispered into her ear. "Can you send Homura to escort her to her room? I think you should come with me outside." Mia looked at him curiously and obviously wondered where this was going. Harry simply smirked and leaned in again while he whispered, "You'll want to bring your sword with. We have a guest outside who is simply dying to meet you." Mia's eyes widened and her jaw suddenly set firmly in determination. She nodded and turned to Homura. She very sweetly spoke to him, no betrayal, or hint of the turmoil that raged inside her visible to any present besides Harry, who could only tell Harry through her eyes. "Homura, could you please show Akatsu to the room next to yours on the right? She'll be staying there. Afterwards bring her back and have Winky measure her for some new clothes and find out what else she requires." Neither waited for an acknowledgement and they stepped out of the room into the hallway. Mia stopped at a hidden compartment near the door and pressed a latch Harry had never noticed. A small sliver of the wall moved and Mia extracted the goblin-made sword from the compartment and turned towards the main entrance with Harry at her side. "New hiding spot?" asked Harry. Mia smiled. "It's a beautiful sword and a generous gift. It deserves better than a closet." The duo walked outside and approached the dark form still that lay on the ground. Mia's eyes burned with an otherworldliness that was visible even in the low light of the moon. "He's bound, unconscious, and petrified. There's his sword," said Harry as he pointed to an object on the ground about a meter away from Matsu. "I wouldn't touch it yourself though. I assume it's loaded to hell and back with spells from whoever put the same ones on yours and Kara's." Mia understood and nodded, then ordered, "Make it so he can talk, but not move." Harry acknowledged and waved his hand. The pulse that issued from it freed only Matsu's head from the petrifying curse. Another woke him up with a renervate. Matsu groaned loudly, but quickly stilled. He was quickly on high alert as he realized he could only move his head. "You seem to have found yourself in a difficult position, number 5, Mia said coldly. Matsu's eyes snapped to Mia's. True fear now showed in them as he realized just how bad of a situation he had managed to find himself in. "Hello Mia, I haven't violated your rules since I did not willingly place myself within your territory." Harry smirked at this. If Matsu wanted to claim the moral high ground of not violating some agreement between Mia and the others who knew her identity, he would certainly allow it. These rules may have been all that prevented Karasuba and Mia from all-out blows that would have turned all of Tokyo into a battleground. However, Harry certainly never agreed to anything. Mia simply stared at him. It actually unnerved Harry. She displayed not a drop of her considerable power or moved her hand to her sword. She was simply gazed into Matsu's eyes. Harry could almost hear the unspoken challenge from Mia to Matsu that dared him to dig himself a deeper hole. Mia whispered, "You attacked Takami. You helped your master almost steal a child's innocence. I knew you were cruel. I knew years ago that you secretly enjoyed turning the members of the squad against each other in some sadistic game for your own amusement. But all that pales in comparison to what you and your little boy master tried to do today. How is the one standing next to you any better?" shouted Matsu. "He didn't save your precious green girl. He was there fighting my master Sekirei for the right to claim her himself. And then he stole a discarded number for his own gratification." Harry growled in response. He suddenly desired nothing more than to crucio this guy's brains out through his ears. The elder wand was already in his hand and halfway raised up, its tip a bright blood red. Its steady rise stopped however when Mia reached and stayed his hand. He looked at her, and simply saw her shake her head. There will be no violence within the inn, Mia said simply. Harry's mind cleared, and then nodded in acknowledgement. He then forced himself to clamp down on his anger as best he could. He had just fallen easily for another of Matsu's vaunted word games. So who's the new guy, Mia? You finally replaced old Takehito, huh? He's a bit of a shrimp though, I doubt he'd even be able to last long enough to scratch that, but that was all he was able to get out before Harry silenced him with a quick wave of his hand. He turned to Mia. There's no point listening to this idiot. All he knows is how to manipulate people. Without his voice, he's useless. What do you want to do with him, ma'am? It was very rare someone held enough of Harry's respect that his automatic circuitry to disrespect authority decided to shut down. Mia was definitely one of those individuals you couldn't help but show respect to after someone met her. That was even after he knew quite a bit of her dirty laundry. This was first and foremost Mia's grudge, and in this he would defer to her wishes entirely. Mia was silent for a few moments and seemed to stare not at Matsu but through him. When she finally responded, she spoke casually, almost conversationally to Harry. No trace of the vicious bloodthirsty warrior that had been held in check the past few minutes could be heard. When a single number was eliminated in the past, it caused a widespread disruption at MBI. If instead of being eliminated, one was terminated today, it would incite panic throughout the upper echelons of the company. Easily seeing where this statement would lead, Harry played along. I take it the location of the discovery of such an incident would be just as important as the identity of the victim, Harry mused out loud. As well as ensuring the perpetrators of such an event remained anonymous, furthering MBI's paranoia. I see you understand, Mr. Potter, she said sweetly before she turned back to Matsu. Harry, who had enjoyed the little banter, learned something new just then. Up till this point in his life, he was unaware if bodily functions would work while under a petrifying spell. Matsu just proved the theory correct when it became quite obvious he had pissed himself at their words. He knew there was no way he would survive whatever vengeance Mia was about to exact upon him. His mouth still flapped, despite no sound coming out. Even after everything he had done, the fool still tried to beg for his life or insult them. I shall return shortly, Mr. Potter. Please tell the others, not to worry, Mia said as she turned and walked toward Matsu. Are you sure you don't want any help? I can make it so you aren't seen and then transport you back here instantly when you're through. She gave a sad half smile, walked over, and held Harry's cheek with one palm. You've done enough today, Harry. You've given hope to 3 girls today who had thought it lost, and shown 2 more the possibility that it may exist again. You gave me back my sister today, even if we will likely never be as close as we once were. Today has brought more than I could have ever dreamed. She leaned in and lightly kissed his other cheek. You've done enough. Let others carry the burden once in a while. I'll see you soon, she said simply and walked towards Matsu. She reached down and easily lifted the man with one hand by the scruff of his neck. Be careful, Mia, I think Kusano will miss you if you don't come back. She gave a full-blown smile that had a mischievous element that only grew the longer she held it, as if she realized something Harry hadn't. Yes, Harry, I'm sure Kusano will be the only one to miss me. And with nary a sound, she was gone like the wind into the night, which left Harry to simply roll his eyes. Get busy with the demon landlady. Right, thought Harry. He needed that about as much as he needed a hole in his head. 00000. Harry checked his watch as he sat down alone in the inn's lounge. It was now 10:55 p.m. He really should head to bed now with as long as this day had been so far, but he got the nagging feeling there were a few more things he could do tonight. Matsu's fate really didn't bother him. Matsu had been party to what was essentially the attempted rape and enslavement of a 7-year-old girl. According to Homura, he had helped do this to other Sekirei serving under Mikogami. He wished he had ripped the names of the victims from his mind before turning him over to Mia, but it was only a small matter. He had a few ideas on how to undermine the authority of the Mega Ashikabis at some point in the future that he would have to run by the girls later. At least one of them would hopefully be the route taken. He wondered what Karasuba had done during the rest of her day. She wasn't aware of the 4 new people in the inn, maybe he should write her before going to bed. Whatever Mia was about to inflict upon Matsu was likely to cause Karasuba some headaches for her job. He realized the rambling nature of his thoughts betrayed his weariness. Mentally he was utterly exhausted. Maybe, instead of composing a letter, he would see if Karasuba was alone and apparate over to her apartment. He had weighed that idea's potential for about 10 seconds in his head when Akatsu walked into the room. She had changed at some point in the last hour into an oversized t-shirt and sweatpants. Despite the rather slovenly look, she looked just as amazing as she did in the revealing outfit she wore when he had first encountered her. How are you? Harry asked. Fine, trying to come to terms with tonight still, she said quietly after she had sat down next to Harry at the table. Quite a bit happened today, that's certainly for sure. Homura gave an overview. She wouldn't tell me who tipped you off that Manaka would make an announcement at 10 p.m. to go after Ku. Ku, Harry asked. 108 likes being called Ku, she stated simply. She looked at him, a definite smirk on her face now, that was rather sneaky by the way, bringing Ku here and then heading back to the Arboretum and just standing there. I think we were more interested in Higa's gang of thugs than Mikogami's at the time. We knew Matsu was likely in the area though. Homura was very uncertain about going head-to-head with number 5. Uzume and Musubi may have brought the fight close, but they would have had a rough time. And that's a big if that hinged on the fight being a 3-on-1. That's why I went right back. I knew I could take him out if he showed up. Well, from what I saw, Matsu didn't stand a chance against you. Homura mentioned a bit more about your powers. They're quite amazing. Harry ran his hand through his hair sheepishly at this. Despite years of practice, he still could not quite react normal or understand when people complimented him. He avoided a response when her first compliment made Harry think about something else that had bothered him in retrospect. He had noticed only a few Sekirei had that drive to kill and could do it instinctively, reactively, and have the act completed before it had even registered in their own minds that the deed was done. Karasuba had it. Mia had it, as well. Haihane almost had it with her training, but she still needed a lot more experience. Musubi definitely didn't have it, and neither did Homura for that matter. Akatsu may have a bit more of the potential for it if she was properly trained in her abilities, though Harry wasn't sure if that was exactly the sort of mindset Akatsu needed after everything that had happened to her. Harry then thought of an idea. It may even help bring Akatsu out of her shell a bit. Would you like me to help you train your abilities a bit more? I was already thinking about trying to help Homura with her control of some advanced forms of fire. I'm sure I could find some pretty crazy things to do with ice that I could teach you to do as well. Quite a bit won't have anything to do with fighting. It'll be more about you learning about yourself. What can you train me in? She asked quickly, clearly interested. Well, not all of your powers have to be used to fight. Some elemental powers can be quiet, expressive, beautiful even. And they're only limited by your imagination. Exploring them will only make you that much more powerful. Harry reached out and took hold one of Akatsu's hands. He placed one of his above and below her hand. Magic is all about intent. It's all about imagination. And most importantly, it's the same as life itself. Once you realize that if you remove the artificial barriers we and others place around ourselves, if we ignore what others say is impossible or that we can't possibly do. At this point, Harry removed his hands from Akatsu's. You'll realize that you can do anything, and nothing is impossible. A softly illuminated flower made of ice now lay in Akatsu's hand. It was cool to the touch, and shifted and changed colors randomly as Akatsu stared at it unblinkingly. You're just like me, Akatsu. You were raised and conditioned to think a certain way. That you were worthless. That you were a freak. It took me a long time to realize it was those who hurt me who were the freaks, who weren't normal. I'll be teaching you things you can do with your abilities, pushing you to become better. And, if you'll let me, I'll be helping to undo all the things people have done to you through words. It'll be hard. Even to this day, 15 years after I found out I can do the things I do, I still have moments where I just need to be alone. Where I feel my life hasn't amounted to anything. Where I still hear my aunt and uncle shout, freak, at me. I'll help you going forward, if you'll help me when you see me slip. Akatsu simply looked away and closed her eyes, and nodded. I know you are probably uncomfortable talking about what they've done to you, so how about I tell you a little bit about me? I think with everything you've gone through, if you're going to trust me, you should be able to ask as many questions of me as you want. With the number of questions Akatsu asked about how he grew up, most of it pre-Hogwarts related, it was nearly 1 in the morning before Harry mentioned the previous day of his life. Harry's ideas on re-winning Sekirei made her shake her head in wonder, and made her curious as to the identity of the 2 mysterious Sekirei he wanted to protect. After she heard just how Homura had changed, it made her wonder if there really was hope for her future. Maybe Harry could fix her, and make it so she could choose an Ashikabi. I'm surprised at your willpower. You potentially have multiple unwinged Sekirei here who will all likely want to wing to you, and yet you've made no effort to do so, said Akatsu slowly and evenly. You realize that acting like this will only make you more attractive to these girls. Harry bowed his head and nodded in acknowledgement. Maybe yes, maybe no. But I won't ask any of them to let me wing them. I'll let them pursue me in this case. I really don't see myself denying any of it if they flat out ask me. I'm just more worried about having a lack of time to fairly devote to each girl if more come. I've essentially got 4 now, no need to actively seek more. Right now I have Musubi, Homura, and potentially the 2 other girls. I've barely had time to really sit with Musubi and talk with her much since her winging, and that really bothers me. At least with Homura, I get the distinct feeling she isn't into dudes, and holds a candle for someone else. I rarely have ever pursued girls in my life. Too many times they've only wanted my reputation or have been interested in my family's money. Very few of them have ever been genuinely interested in me. That's another reason why the past 2 days hasn't been all that bad, I think. These girls could care less that I have money. For some reason, they seem attracted to me for reasons they can't help without even really knowing my past or caring for it once they hear about it. And it's been a long time since I've felt useful, I guess. I've just been going through the motions, learning things for the sake of learning. Now, I'm actually getting to put some of this stuff to use again. Like when I helped Homura this morning, or hopefully helping you next. Speaking of which, might as well get the first part of that out of the way now. Harry conjured some paper and pen, and set them up to write out the results of the diagnostic spells. Just sit there for about the next 15 minutes. I know you'll be bored, but it takes a while to get through all the healing diagnostic spells I know. He once again muttered spells and waved his wand over Akatsu. She listened intently to the words he mumbled for a while, but eventually gave up. She was interested at first in what the pen wrote out, but it was a bit too far away and she was never very good at English beyond the basics. Eventually the lateness of the hour began to show, and she slowly began to succumb to sleep. Harry finished probably 5 minutes after Akatsu had nodded off. She even had begun to drool slightly, which Harry thought was one of the cutest things he had ever seen. Mia had silently walked in halfway through his casting and just stood behind him and silently observed him. When Harry finished, he walked over to the paper and cast 2 duplication charms on the documents. He surprised Mia by handing one to her. Did you think that I didn't notice you walk in? He smiled a tired smile at her. I guess I'm losing my skills in my old age, Mia said cheekily. You're hardly old. You look like you're younger than me, in fact. Such flattery, young man. You'll give an old woman ideas. Oh, I wouldn't dream of giving a woman in this place ideas. I'd be afraid of permanent injury from your soup ladle. As well you should. Her eyes seemed to dance merrily, which caused Harry to laugh. You all right? Harry asked, figuring it was best to not mention Mutsu directly. She nodded in acknowledgement of the unspoken question being asked. I'll be all right. You, sir, however, should put her to bed and then find your own. Who knows what plots you will find yourself embroiled in tomorrow. After a half smile, he wandered over to the table, picked up the 2 remaining copies of his spell analysis, and pocketed them. He picked up the still sleeping Akatsu, who wrapped her arms around Harry's neck as she settled into his arms. Harry could not help but think that she really was a natural beauty. Her hair smelled amazing as she nuzzled into Harry's neck. Mia's going to kill me if she keeps this up, thought Harry. He carried her to Akatsu's room without incident and wandlessly opened the door. He was able to get her into bed easily enough, but by this time she had woken up and just watched Harry tuck her into bed without him realizing it. Harry, she spoke softly. Harry looked up into the shining blue eyes of the women that had spent the last few hours with him. The most of any Sekirei he'd met so far beyond Karasuba. Yes, he said as he conjured a chair and sat down beside the bed. Thank you for bringing me here, for giving me a chance to be something. I don't think I'll be able to repay you for doing this. Harry smiled. Akatsu, there is no debt of honor amongst friends. He leaned forward and gently kissed the crest on her forehead and said, never give up hope. He wiped a tear from her otherwise emotionless face and squeezed one of her hands. Wait just a few more moments before going to sleep. Dobby. Yes, sir. Harry Potter, sir. Could you retrieve a necklace for me, Dobby? The elf popped away. At her half-tilted head and the glance she was giving him, he said, yes, that was Dobby, the elf I told you about earlier. He's worked directly for me for a long time now. Dobby returned right then, and handed him the necklace and popped away. Harry held out the necklace, so she could see it. This necklace serves 2 purposes. One is a translation charm, so you'll never have to worry about me speaking English to you instead of Japanese. The second is the crest on the necklace itself. It's my family crest, the Potter crest. Wearing this means you are under my family's protection. It means you can also call the elves to you if you're in trouble. Would you wear this for me? I would be honored to wear it, she all but whispered to him. Harry placed the necklace around her neck and clasped it in the back. She fingered the crest lightly between her fingers, and watched in fascination as it reflected light from muted lamps in the hallway. Good night, number 7. There was a slight hesitation from Akatsu, and then she said, good night, my Ashikabi. Harry stared. Are you sure? He asked. I do not care if I am ever able to gain my crest properly. I know I have found you, and I know in my heart that's all I will need. Harry stared at her after her declaration for only a moment, before he walked back over, leaned down, and kissed her full on the mouth. He felt the magic of the Sekirei bond for the briefest of moments, but then suddenly it wasn't there. They broke apart. There was confusion in his eyes and disappointment in hers. Akatsu genuinely hoped it would have worked. We'll figure it out, Akatsu. Get some sleep. He kissed her one more time, holding it just a bit longer than he previously did. Their tongues circled gently around each other, tasting the other's mouth. As they kissed, Harry placed one hand over hers and created another ice flower which glowed a dull electric blue similar to the color of her eyes. He thought of how Ku had somehow imbued the trees in the forest with her emotions, and wondered if the same could be done here. He pushed the peace and feeling of contentment he felt while kissing Akatsu into the flower. As they broke apart, Harry wiped away her tears one more time and then covered the flower with her other hand. Why is walking out of this room so hard? He whispered with a smile. Her lip twitched and head jerked a bit. Harry assumed that was as close to an outright laugh as she was capable of getting in her current state. Go to bed, before Mia kicks your ass. As you wish, oh almighty Ice Queen. She shook her head at him, definitely amused this time as he walked out of the room and shut the door behind him. He looked up once in the hallway to see Mia there, with a small smile upon her face. You two are incredibly cute together. I'll let this slide this one time. Thank you, Mia. I'll see you in the morning, he said with a smile. Turning, he suddenly felt a sharp pain on top of his head. OWW, what was that for then? I'm sure I missed you doing at least one thing wrong today, she said mischievously while she walked away. That woman is going to be the end of me, thought Harry ruefully. 00000. Harry finally made it to his room, to discover that there were no intruders present. He had half expected and hoped Musubi would be there again, but figured Mia must have just come from doing rounds and swept her off to her own bed. He highly doubted Homura would ever pay him nightly visits. With his reaction to Takami's injury today, he figured there was something there long established between the two, and Harry vowed not to stand in its way if his guess was true. He pulled the diagnostic results of Akatsu out, sat down at the desk in the room, and read. She had an obscene number of compulsions placed upon her. None of them, however, were woven together with any means of subtlety or skill. It should be easy to remove the compulsions, but he could not, for the life of him, figure out what they did to Akatsu. A few random potions affected her but that did not worry Harry. They were nowhere near the level of intensity that the alchemic loyalty potions Dumbledore had laced Harry's food with for years, but they were still somewhat strong. At least the potions were basic enough in composition that he figured they were key to MBI or someone specific like an adjuster and were not anything more sinister or complicated. Finally, his eyes reached the mind scan portion of the results and read the words, emotion suppression block. This was not unheard of despite how terrible its impact had to be on her. He felt sick as he continued reading and began seeing things he had never heard used before, empathic block and psyche response ward. Empaths were very rare in the magical world. Probably on the order of 10 times more rare than metamorphs like Homura. And what the heck was a psyche response ward? He vaguely recalled something with psyche in the description being used on prisoners who were escape risks. It slowed their cognitive thinking down, causing them to become forgetful and make more mistakes. Then he tried to think, how would these things prevent Akatsu from winning from her ashikabi? When he had kissed her, he felt the process try to start, but it had died before it could begin. One of these three things likely sabotaged the process was the likely culprit. However, which one was it? He began writing down his intended treatment list. He would start with the easy stuff, which was the removal of compulsions and flushing of specific random potions still in her system. He saw no problem with the removal of the emotion block or psyche ward if it indeed was what he thought it was. It was the empathic block that worried him. Empaths were rare, not only because the ability rarely manifested itself, it was because if the empath wasn't identified early, such as 4 to 5 years of age, almost all were eventually declared clinically insane by the age of 6 or 7. He took out the additional duplicate copy of her results and summoned Dobby. Dobby, can you see if Madame Pomfrey is busy again, and see if she recalls any specific treatments related to preparing empaths for the onset of their ability? Please show her these results as well, along with this copy of what I intended to do to treat Akatsu. Figuring Dobby would be a while, he decided to see how Karasuba was doing. Winky. Yes, Harry, can you go over and quietly check on Karasuba and see if she's in her apartment, alone and awake? If she is, can you ask her if she minds if I stop by? Will do, Harry. Winky popped away, and was back within 15 seconds. She is awake, Harry. She says you can come over if you would like. Harry immediately stood, disillusioned himself, and apparated directly into Karasuba's apartment. He appeared by the table where they had spoken with each other the day before. She sat alone and absently swirled a glass of red wine while she stared out the window at the city. She intuitively glanced at the empty air as he popped into the room and began to silently cast ward spells with his wand. When he finished, he removed the disillusionment and sat down. The moment he hit the cushioned seat, he took a deep breath and sighed loudly. She had never glanced away from where she knew he was invisibly standing, and showed no surprise as he appeared out of nowhere. Busy night, she said mischievously. Harry snorted. Remember this afternoon, I mentioned something vaguely along the lines of, we could always add more tasks since it was obvious we weren't trying to do enough. Harry said all this while waving one hand absently in the air to emphasize and quote words while he quoted his own words in a very mocking voice. However, he utterly failed to match his movements up with any words of importance while he talked, which made the effect rather comical. She merely nodded and never stopped the slow swirl of the wine glass in her hand. She did purse her lips in an effort to keep from smiling at the sight of him being so tired. Well, would you smack me real hard next time I say something like that before it jinxes us again? Why, what happened? Manaka was furious tonight. 108 was taken from the Arboretum and no one knows how or where she ended up. Seeing Harry's self-satisfied nod at this, Karasuba decided to reveal the surprise of the night that had her up drinking at 2 a.m. Oh, and Matsu's severed head was found downstairs in the building's lobby on a pike. That got Harry's attention. Harry blinked, then blinked again, and then suddenly began laughing hysterically. Karasuba understood immediately that he definitely was involved in these events, but something had likely taken an unexpected turn. You're never going to believe it, but here's what happened, and Harry began his tale. He summarized the meeting with Higa, his Bloodhound gang's actions, rescuing Chi and Chiho, the fate of the 3 prisoners, the correct diagnosis for Chiho, the actions that surrounded number 108 minutes after the announcement went out, being attacked by Yomi and Akatsu's subsequent, the capture of Matsu and delivery to Mia, and then the results of Akatsu's scans. Well, began Karasuba in reference to Matsu. That certainly was Mia's style years ago. I didn't expect her to do something like that now though. They certainly won't connect it with her. She'll be a suspect initially when it comes to people who had grudges against Matsu, but those are almost too numerous to count. MBIs, think tank, folks all are firmly of the belief she's staying entirely neutral in all this. I'm rather sad I'm not considered their primary suspect since I unfortunately have an alibi for the time frame, she said with wiggle of her eyebrows. Well, I'm glad you're such good spirits at least. I wouldn't want your life to become boring either. I'm still trying to wrap my head around Akatsu's scans. They really did a number on her. Harry duplicated the paper again, and passed it to Karasuba. I'm drinking, Harry, she deadpanned. Can't you at least translate this or something? Honestly, making me think in English past 2 in the morning, she pouted spectacularly, which was a face he would have never in a million years believed Karasuba could pull off. Harry waved a hand at the paper, and the writing changed over to Japanese which she then read. He could tell the moment she reached the mind scan portion. Empath. Yeah, I think that may be the main culprit, but I'm not sure. It's crazy, Homura is a metamorph, and Akatsu is an empath. Unfortunately, I can't remove that block yet. I'll need figure out how to prepare her mind for what will happen once she starts getting flooded with people's emotions. Otherwise, she'll need to live in goddamn cave for the rest of her life in order to avoid going nuts from feeling everyone's emotions. Harry just shook his head and closed his eyes. She isn't going to have it easy. Harry decided that being depressed about Akatsu's future helped no one now. So what did you do this afternoon after you got back? The smirk came back full bore at this question. She was definitely highly entertained at whatever happened. Oh, listen to Bennett Tsubasa complain how Natsuo isn't in love with her for a good while. She can definitely rant if she needs to. I listened to Manaka do one of his loony bin rants to the sky and his gods about his great plan for the Golden Age. She paused to take a sip of wine, and then resumed her slow swirl of the remaining contents of the glass. Then listened to Manaka scream and rage when Yomi got found in a war zone with only her half-dead Ashikabi nearby. Listened to the board of directors go nuts an hour and a half ago when Matsu's head got found here in the lobby. Oh, and listened to Manaka give the discipline squad new orders. A Cheshire cat grin appeared on her face. Harry realized he never wanted that face directed at him if he had somehow wronged Karasuba. He figures it was Higa's massive group of Sekirei that somehow overpowered Mutsu and Yomi and then attacked Mikogami. Manaka obviously heard Higa lost 2 Sekirei today and must believe Mikogami was behind that encounter, so Higa must have sought revenge for it. Our new orders are to focus primarily upon the ongoing actions of Higa and Mikogami, since such levels of violence aren't to be tolerated this early into Manaka's game. We're to interfere if they get too uppity. At Harry's stunned expression at the unintended positive consequences of their actions tonight, Karasuba continued. Basically, I did a lot of listening today, and laughing on the inside that you were probably behind pretty much all of it and nobody had a clue. Karasuba tipped her glass in a mock salute to Harry at the end of this. Hearing what actually happened from you just makes it all the more impressive. Harry thought some wine sounded very good at this point. He waved a hand at the table and conjured a crystal glass. Another wave and the bottle rose into the air and poured him a drink without a drop spilled. He raised his glass into the air, and nodded to Karasuba. A lot happened today. And we have you to thank for getting 108 out as easily as we did. She snorted. Occasionally I'm nice when it amuses me. Harry nodded again with a small grin. He stood up, waved a wand and Karasuba's chair expanded into a small love seat. He sat down next to her, and leaned back, and put an arm around her shoulder and absently began playing with her hair. After a few moments, he looked her in the eyes and lightly touched her face. Do you intend to stay amused with this passing fancy for long? Or will you get bored with it and move on? Asked Harry. Karasuba downed the rest of her wine in one gulp. She looked at him with lust in her eyes and a grin on her face. If we weren't waiting to try and re-wing me for at least a few days more, I would throw you on that bed right this instant. Harry merely raised an eyebrow. He responded with mock arrogance in his voice. It's late, and no doubt you're quite tired. I doubt you could keep up with me at the moment, Harry said with small taunting half-smile formed on his face as he finished. Is that a challenge, Mr. Potter? She said, eyes flashed not in rage, but instead that this was a challenge she would gladly accept. Harry leaned in, thoroughly enjoying their banter. The only challenge I see is being so close to you without removing all your clothes myself. I see no challenge occurring for me after that happens. She held her poker face for only a few moments before she began to laugh uncontrollably. Finally she said in frustration, this is so unfair.